At Your Instep is brought to you by Comic Town and BCW Supplies. Hello, and welcome to At Your Instep. My name is Morgan. I'm here with Dave.
Hello.
And Mike.
Hello.
And we have another fun-filled episode for you folks this week. We, of course, are going to be finishing our Palooza and talking about the Open and a little bit about the limited GP, but just saying, like, this is who won, and maybe talk a little bit about what else happened. So we're going to save any community topics that we have for this week for next week, where we have a little bit more freedom to be verbose about some things. So let's jump right into competitive. So GP Indy, which was team limited, and we wanted to give a shout out to the winning team, who I'm going to be up front here. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry that I'm going to horrendously butcher your names.
Did they actually win, Dave, or do you just draw names?
No, this is the actual.
No, they actually won.
See, here's the winning team of Faye, Ye, and Zhao, who combined 0 previous GP top 8s, which is pretty impressive. This is if we teamed for a GP and won, and
Probably not quite, but yeah.
This team winning gives me hope that someday maybe we can assemble the dream team
Hope
and just
that someday you can win a GP,
ride the coattails
so that somebody else can go Mick.
To be fair, I definitely got their last names right.
That's fair.
I'm just, out of respect for the players, I'm not going to horrendously butcher their first names. But they took down a pretty talented top 4. I know that PV's team.
You had PV, Efro, and Ben Stark.
We're in the finals, right?
I think so.
I think they were in the finals, if I'm not mistaken.
They had Shah Shanhar and Oliver 2.
Yeah.
And the other team had...
Team Young Money.
Yeah. The other team with... was it Neil Oliver... Ben White and Eric Severson, I believe. So all the other teams had players that you would recognize, and
right.
You had this team kind of out of nowhere that just took it down. So
I mean,
I'll be honest, I didn't watch any of this GP.
No,
it's limited, but
there's even a comparison graph to their overall views, and it looked pretty bleak. To be honest, comparatively, you could see that their peak users were somewhere around the same time of if Newmont or LSV are streaming, they also get similar pool as the GP was getting this weekend. So, which is there's a lot of compounding factors to that you had the Open to watch, and it's a limited event, and people don't typically like to watch limited events. The real thing that we kind of wanted to talk about, not to downplay the GP, but obviously Channel Fireball Events has been highlighting the Pauper events that they are having on Sundays. And this particular Pauper event they had this Sunday, or this past Sunday, had 200 plus players attending the event.
Yeah.
And that is a huge amount of interest in a format that is often I feel was often compared to Pauper, not Pauper, but
yes.
to Frontier.
No, Frontier, this ain't.
Right, correct. The Frontier, comically had a lot of hype around a similarly sort of dissatisfactory standard environment, and tournament organizers for GPs had Frontier events that no one attended because it wasn't a real format.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair to really compare them because, like you said, Frontier never was an official format. Pauper has been an official format for a long time. And though it's less popular than some of the more, I guess, mainstream formats, it is something that has existed for a long time, and they curated a ban list, and I think it's definitely something different than like an alternate standard as well, which like Frontier was kind of like alternative standard, or like maybe a slightly larger standard, whereas Pauper is like, if you want to play like Counterspell and Brainstorm, but you can't afford Legacy, like this is kind of an alternative for you. So I'll be honest, I'm pretty excited to start building some Pauper decks. I'm jumping on the train.
I definitely this definitely made me. I was pretty skeptical before, but this sort of makes me change my tune a little bit. This feels a lot more legit. Now I do know that Frontier had a tournament like that in Japan, the store that sort of set it up, but we saw some local stores who said they'll fire even this last week, and I don't know. I think it's I don't want to say legitimized because again, as you said, it's a real format, but that kind of feels like that.
Yeah, friend of the show, Elliot, took down a local Pauper tournament with Blue Red Delver. So another format Delver's actually good in. So
yeah, I mean, like when you look back on the the history of Magic, there are definitely some very powerful cards that were printed at Common, and they don't necessarily make them like they used to in that regard, but there is a lot of depth to the format as a whole, and I think that with the popular, I think it is still a pretty popular format on Magic Online and has been for a while, which is where predominantly it has existed, and usually it's a good entry level format because you can get a constructed deck for
like $50.
Yeah, $50.
And that's from if you're starting from just zero.
Nothing. Like basic lands is all you have.
Everybody probably has at least half a Pauper deck just laying around in boxes, so it's like you just pick up the pieces that you need.
I made 2 last night. There was a deck that I was posted by friends of ours that did finally pique my curiosity, which was a Tron deck, which I had all these Antiquities signed Tron lands I wasn't using. And then I was like, oh, I just have these. So that's kind of why I built them. Like, I just always have these cards. So it's cool. I don't know if I'll ever actually get to play them or not, but
yeah.
It's cool.
Like, I don't know if we're ever going to, like, really get in-depth talking about Pauper on the podcast.
No,
here.
we're all in. This is where we're announcement. We're launching our mini-cast. Puny Pauper cast. Not puny because the format's puny because it's tiny. It'll be like 3 minutes long,
tiny?
and we'll release it. No, the Pauper podcast will be tiny.
Gotcha.
And it'll be like 3 minutes long. We'll release it every other Tuesday.
Okay.
You guys are not in. You don't seem excited about this.
Huh?
I mean, it's a start, I guess.
The format and where it goes. It's good to see that there are a lot of people that are interested in this format, going out and wanting and willing themselves to go play a side event at a GP, and there being over 200 people win. There have been some like Star City Games Classics that have failed to reach 200 plus players. So there's definitely a demand for it, and it all comes back to support. I do think that there is a slippery slope when it comes to this format being highlighted, though, because I feel like it is obviously an underlooked at format, and I think that the more that it is highlighted, the more that it is scrutinized. And if that does become the case, then if you're like the I don't know, the hipster Pauper player that's always been playing, that more eyes on it may cause the format to shift and change into something maybe you don't like as much due to like potential look at the format and maybe adjustments they make to cards and their legality in the format. I'm not saying like that's conjecture, but I mean that could be a thing that happens. Also, the format is cheap now. But it may not always be that case. If more people get into it, then you will see those prices start to climb on some of the cards that are underprinted.
Yeah, there's certain cards like Gush. Ash Barons is a card I know is like $6 or $7.
Yeah,
right. But that was only printed in what Commander?
The newest Commander sets.
Yeah. That one's kind of a staple, and I think like something like Channer's Edict. Couple is like $5. I mean, like it's not like you're going to spend a ton of money comparatively. It's like if you're somebody that has, plays Modern or something like that, it's really a drop in the bucket. But for a format that is obviously not as supported as Modern, it's like, do you really want to invest a lot of money into it? But again, I mean, you can probably build several decks for the same price as one Modern deck.
For now, for sure.
For now.
But I mean, like, again, there's supply and demand. If there's a ton of demand and like people understand how,
I don't know. I don't think it's right to talk like doom and gloom. Like,
I'm not talking doom and gloom. I'm just saying like the highlights of the format might shift and change as more attention is brought to it.
Morgan's just saying you can play the format, just don't play it too much.
I mean,
Otherwise,
honestly,
you might have to pay too much.
It's super easy for them to control that. If Pauper actually became that popular, like all their master sets, like it's not hard to just start throwing commons in that you need to put in there. So it's a lot easier to reprint for that format than any other format in supplemental product.
I was going to mention that too. This is a format that like they have kind of like given a nod to Pauper in some of the master sets where they've like downgraded certain cards
to break
common.
it a couple times, but
like Peregrine Drake maybe wasn't the best idea, but they've kind of given Pauper some new little toys to play with, the cards that have never been common before being shifted down. So it's definitely like that it's something that Wizards does think about at least a little bit. So that's pretty cool, and like I hope it continues to grow, and I hope like even just locally, in our community or like wherever you guys might be, then that's something that people at least give a shot, because I think it's pretty cool.
It is a format that is much more closer to, I would say, Legacy, in all honesty, than something like Modern, due to some of the powerful cards printed out common back in the day. You get to play with Hydroblasts and Pyroblasts, which you can't come anywhere close to in Modern, and things like you get to play with all the good blasts, right? You get to play like Fire Blast and
all the blasts in the past.
Oh yeah, I love that Brendan Fraser movie.
Oh, it has Christopher Walken in it. It's actually pretty great.
I do like that movie. That's my second favorite Brendan Fraser movie.
Monkey Bones number one.
Third favorite Brendan Fraser movie.
Is Monkey Bones number one?
Bones is not
Monkey
number
Bones
one.
So good though.
No, I mean that movie has Chris Kattan in it.
Yeah, it does.
No, thank you.
He plays a corpse, which is pretty similar to what.
well, most people want him to be. Yeah, I understand.
Wow. Sorry, Corky. Is the Mummy your first favorite?
Oh, of course.
Oh, okay. I thought you might be going like some weird like George of the.
Oh, George of the second. What are you talking about, man? Gaffy. It's so great. It's Jabba. Oh boy!
I couldn't have quoted a line to that movie, so I'm going to believe your list is accurate.
I watched a lot of that movie
last week.
Man, I wish. It's funnier than most things that are on the TV these days.
Wow, you sound old.
Yep.
Thanks, Dave.
I'm not even involved in this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dave just thinks we're talking about the cartoon show.
That's what I grew up on.
So let's move on to the Open. It was in Dallas. It was team constructed. The team of Julian John, Jonathan Rossum, and Kevin King took it down with Marty Vehicles, 5-color humans, and lands, respectively. And of course, not a lot changed in Modern. Not a lot changed in Legacy. The big shifts that we're going to be looking at are going to be Standard. That's where we're going to focus mainly. The team event is a little bit awkward because we don't necessarily know the breakdown of the win-loss ratio of the Standard decks, but we at least want to highlight those here real quick.
Can I say one thing about Legacy? I wish they would stop putting lands on camera. If there is a deck that is uninteresting to watch, it is lands. Dear Lord. Oh, did they win yet? Oh, they made it 2020. They won. Cool. That was it. That's the whole match. They don't do anything else cool. So, sorry, Lance. You're a sweet deck, I guess, but don't be on camera anymore.
Speaking of lands, I just want to mention real quick. I know we don't talk about Legacy a lot. I just want to mention Zach Elsick's Mono Red Sneak Attack deck in Legacy. So, his team made top 4.
Yep, he lost the lands.
And Mono Red Sneak Attack featuring Combustible Gear Hulk, Blood Moon, and Blood Sun main deck. So Blood Sun, sneaking into Legacy there.
Yeah.
He got to do like some crazy stuff with, I know, City of Traders. It doesn't have the sacrifice clause if you have a Blood Sun in place. You have multiple City of Traders.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
But yeah, Blood Sun is definitely a card that can be pretty powerful in modern and Legacy. And Legacy is obviously, I think, more of a better fit for it. In all honesty, just for things like the mono red sneak attack deck that takes advantage of stripping lands of their sometimes pretty awful other techs other than producing lands, City of Traders and such. So
yeah, I mean it's kind of fits the style of the deck where it's like kind of like half combo deck, half prison style,
right? In Legacy, you're gonna have people playing greedy mana bases more often, where like they lean heavily on their fetch lands, and then you're turning those off is a pretty big deal.
And in some ways, like a turn one, like if you're able to like turn one a Blood Sun, that's even more devastating than a turn one Blood Moon, because your opponent might just have fetch lands that they can't do anything with. They don't tap for any mana.
Yeah, so it's it's definitely a different card than Blood Moon, but can be just as powerful at the right time.
Yeah.
I
just wanted to mention that.
No,
so.
they featured a lot of L16 during the Open. I do remember that. So let's talk about we'll at least like the top 8 standard decks that we see from the team event. So we have Julia John playing Marty Vehicles. We have Green Black Constrictor played by Andres Champion. Oh, Campion. Campion. I'm putting an H in there for some reason. Sultai Energy by Dan Jessup. Martyr Vehicles again by Dylan Kirkpatrick. Red Black Aggro by Christopher Connett. Teamer Monsters by William Ho. Grixis Control by Jose Rios. And then Blue Black Control by Matthew Garner. Yeah. So that's what our top 8 looks like. A big shock about Dan Jessup playing a Sultai Energy list. But that's the only, energy titled deck, I would say. It's not the only deck that has energy in it, but, the only one that it has that as a main focal point. But, I mean, even when you look at it, you're playing other, non-energy cards, they went with leading heavily on the Scarab God and showing up as a 4 of.
About as heavily as you could go.
Legally in the format, yes. And I mean, if you're worried about your deck, suddenly losing some power, I guess stocking up on Scarab Gods changes those numbers. But as far as like new cards that we see, we do see Jade Light Ranger. When when we look at if we look at the Green Black Constrictor list, we'll also see Jade Light Ranger there as well. And then I know that the Ravenous Chupacabra obviously shows up here, pretty decent with Scarab God as a way to recur it in some fashion. But even though this is a energy deck, I mean, we only really see like Hydra, Siphoner, and Servant as being like the energy cards, and then Aethersphere Harvester as being like another way to generate energy, but a lot more inclusion of non-energy focused cards. Yeah,
I think another card that kind of like seems like it's picking up in popularity, and not just in this deck but in multiple decks, is Merfolk Branchwalker. Yeah, and it's not necessarily a new card since it was in Ixalan, but it's a card that I've seen in like multiple different decks and kind of makes sense.
If Long Tusk Cub isn't as good or possibly good enough anymore, then it makes sense. You replace it with the option that can draw you a card, fix your mana a little bit.
And you don't have Attune with Aether now, so you may need something else to try to help you hit the land drop. Right. So we saw like in a lot of lists, you mentioned Jade Light Ranger. That's kind of like some people are just kind of swapping out Rogue Refiners for Jade Light Ranger. Not really the same card, but somewhat similar.
It interacts pretty favorably with if you go turn 2 Winding Constrictor.
Yeah.
So just saying.
Yeah.
You can build a pretty big monster there.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't really that surprising to see, this Sultai deck or Mardu Vehicles. I mean, Mardu Vehicles didn't lose anything,
right?
So,
and it's biggest enemy or two biggest enemies, took hits as far as that goes.
And that's a list. I guess let's talk about Julian John's list real quick since they won the event. So this is a deck that gets to play Hazoret. So Hazoret, by not being banned, it's not just in the mono red deck. Like, this is kind of the other deck that could play Hazoret to good effect.
Yeah.
And I guess there's nothing really that surprising in this list. There's an Ammon Eternal, which is kind of cool, I guess.
The Ammon Eternal, the one of which is like most of the list play for Hazoret. So it's like, did you not have a formula? He's needed like something with 5 power to exist. The Ammon kind of sticks out like a sore thumb a little bit. As far as like fun new cards, we do see an Angrath in the sideboard, which is pretty sweet. I can attest to that card being pretty awesome.
Yes.
But yeah, everything else is kind of what you exactly what you'd expect. But I mean, Heart of Kieran showed itself to be like a pretty hard to deal with permanent still. So definitely, if you are building a deck, that you should look at ways to deal with that as a magic card on the battlefield.
Yeah, and this list is also, this is kind of going back to like what we saw from Mardu Vehicles back when it was winning the Pro Tour, and back when it was like the deck to beat, where you look at the sideboard and it's like you can board into this like Fumigate, Set All the Wreckage, Sweltering Suns, and like more removal and like Planeswalkers. And it can just be like, okay, we're going to kind of shift gears here. We're going to maybe board out like some of the more aggressive creatures and just be like, okay, I'm going to be this like, Mardu mid-range deck that can go that route as well. And I think like, with Teamer out of the picture, pretty much, like, or Teamer energy being severely weakened.
Teamer's monster deck in the top 8.
Yeah, we got to talk about that one too, by the way.
Yeah,
but
you meant energy.
Yeah, but like, I guess like there aren't that many decks that are able to switch like that after board, which Teamer was kind of the best at. And that's why it was the best deck. So,
yeah.
I think this is a perfectly reasonable choice, going forward.
Oh yeah, for sure. I know that a local player, Jake Lewis, is very excited about Mardu Vehicles being legal. But I know that he is over Azurets. He's playing Flamekin Phoenix. Rekindling Phoenix.
Yeah.
Instead of where you would typically see the Hazoret. And he said that he's been really enjoying it. So.
I would certainly think if your board plan is to go a little more control-y, then the Rekindling Phoenix is going to be a better draw.
Yeah.
But Hazoret still hits like a truck.
Oh, yeah, for sure, for game ones. But both those creatures can certainly fly a Heart of Kieran, though. So figure that one out.
I feel really bad because all I heard in my mind when I said hits like a truck, I heard my background just go truck.
Yeah, no, we understand.
What?
We were all alive in the early 2000s. And if you weren't, look up Cisco.
Yeah, Cisco. Well, not the networking stuff. The musician.
No, SIQUO Cisco.
Yeah.
Wasn't his album like The Year of the Dragon or something like that?
Yes, Cisco is the dragon. So yes.
Didn't he have a Q in the name?
Yeah, he just spelled it. Yeah,
SISQUO, I believe.
Yeah. Yep. Sorry about that, everybody.
I'm not.
Well, let me see another deck list.
Sorry to give you flashbacks of MTV Spring
Let's
Break.
talk about some Teamer monsters.
1996.
So William Ho piloted Teamer monsters. In this, we do see some similarities to like what you might have seen in a other Teamer, a pre-banned Teamer list. We do see a 1 Bristling Hydra, but we see more Glory Bringers, Jadelight Ranger, and Rekindling Phoenix is showing up as some new cards. But we still have Servant of the Conduit, Voltaic Brawler as being more of a sort of what we saw from the red-green energy list that was a bit more aggressive, and 1 Ronus, and not to be outdone, some Brontodon of a thrashing nature was also in here. And like we said, if you want a card that deals with Heart of Kieran, well, there it is. He'll bust that ship right up.
So he's just
Say
tall
what?
enough to like
What?
reach.
Say what?
He just reaches his neck right up there, and be like, no.
No,
But then like his neck gets caught in the
yeah,
propeller.
it goes out with it. They both explode. It's a very Michael.
Thrashing Bronzodon by Michael Bay.
It's a very Michael Bay-esque scene. So, but
Oh, look at that! More rekindling phoenixes.
yeah,
Card is,
Weird.
yeah, the card's good.
and not just because it's on fire.
And Mike's saying that not just because it's a Phoenix either. It's just
It's
know,
true.
a genuinely good card.
I definitely like made a meme for myself. It was like the guy checking out the other girl meme, and just like Chandra's Phoenix, rekindling Phoenix. Like I'm so torn. I'm so torn.
I know.
This is the first time I felt any sort of draw to another Phoenix.
I mean, like you dabbled in like Ash Cloud Phoenix.
I dabbled, but Ash Cloud was like okay, but it wasn't. I was never confused. I was like, you're in standard now. Like this is what I'm doing.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a confusing time. You know,
It is,
Your body's
you know?
changing. It's you know.
Sometimes you're 0-1, sometimes you're 4-3. I don't know.
I think this deck is interesting. Going back to the list we're talking about here, is that main deck is just a red green deck. There are no blue cards in the main deck.
Your lands and how they kind of shape up give you an opportunity to splash for blue cards on the sideboard.
Yep.
So you get
Mainly
like negates,
four negates.
spell pierce. Yeah,
Yeah, that's not the only deck in the top 8 to do this. The red black, or maybe it wasn't on the top 8. I'll check. But the red black aggro decks were doing this as well, where like they were red but only having black for
Like for the Scrap Heap Scrounger, basically.
Scrounger.
Yeah.
The one list has unlicensed disintegration. The other list has cartouches, but it's just like it's very light.
yeah. And I think like not being sort of locked into having to play Robin Up Ruins opens that up.
Yeah,
so it
that makes
opens
total
up for the
sense.
red
Makes
decks.
total sense.
But yeah, we're talking about Christopher Connett's
Yes,
red
yeah.
black aggro list. Who we see the splash for Scrounger, and then like fatal pushes in the sideboard, and then of course the unlicensed disintegration. Which man, that card's kind of picking up an equity, you know, with Marta vehicles, and then something like this, and then maybe if you're more of a red black control list or something like that, or mid range list. Yeah. Something of that sort. So yeah,
I mean, if you look around the format too, you saw a lot of things like obviously Glorybringers, Rekindling Phoenixes, the Scarab God for what it's worth, Tetsumox, things that fatal pushes and abrades and all those kind of things are good. But sometimes you just got to destroy a creature,
right.
like any creature.
Sometimes you just need a murder with upside.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to blow up a bomb without getting a license first.
Correct. That reminds me of the burn spell with trample that's unstable. That's definitely like an unlicensed disintegration
Oh,
as well, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Of course. Were there any other lists here from the top 8? I guess we should talk about the two control lists that we do see down towards the bottom.
Well, is Grixis Energy really a control deck? It's getting a lot of popularity.
This
one is. This
version
is not
okay.
the mid range list.
Okay,
this is
okay, good.
this is like 2 Scare Gob, 3
one has
Church of Your Hold
counterspells.
Okay, I just
spells.
opened it. Yeah, never mind. This is why. Okay, yeah, this is actually Grixis control.
So they both have Search for
Why did I call it
Azcanta.
Grixis Energy then?
Those energy cards.
There is a Grixis Energy mid
No,
range
but once
list.
you open the list, it calls itself Grixis control. That's just a goldfish.
If you are looking on Star City Games page, it is Grixis Control. So they MTG Goldfish has just like gone awry and named their own rate.
Gone rogue.
They got a little bit rogue. But I'm sure, like, if we look between these two lists, we'll probably see a lot of similarities. I assume the Grixis list is, splashing for things like Harness Lightning and maybe a slight energy package with Glimmer to have some sort of payoff with something.
It's not really splashing the red. I mean, it's playing all the colors pretty heavily.
I guess not splashing, but like moving into those. So, like, I'm trying to think of why. Like, why are you playing the energy cards?
I think
it's just like a way to kill larger creatures with Harness Lightning, pretty much.
You have Glimmer Genius is just a good card anyway.
Sure.
And then, you're...
Yeah, I think if you look at that list compared to like the blue black list, like the blue black list is playing 4 Ravenous Chupacabra. If the mana is fairly is effective, I think I'd rather have Harness Lightning than Ravenous Chupacabra. It opens me up to different types of sweepers, and I don't have to play 4-drop 2/2s in my control deck where I have to tap out for a turn.
Yeah,
So
you don't have to play Sorcery Speed, kill spells.
I don't know. I think I like Grixis just for Harness Lightning is still very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just does a lot. Even with like because all the things that were enabling that card are still there. Like nothing got banned from that version of energy. So
Yeah. It's just that like the Grixis mid range list has like more of a more apparent payoff. Like it has Whirler Virtuoso.
Sure.
So like you have like a way a more consistent outlet to expend that extra energy.
The Grixis controller could always, it's not here, but I could always sideboard that card too if I wanted to in the future, which would be something to see.
It'd just be really just like wild and crazy. Play like the tower, Dynamo Tower.
Oh, there you go.
Just
No,
be
this
wild.
is so many braids. Yeah, you can't. I'm sorry, Dynamo
You
Tower.
people are playing like Bratodon, as we previously discussed.
I think Dynamo
Dinosaurs
Towers,
do not like towers.
Yeah, Dynamo Towers.
It's not a dinosaur
It's dead
tower.
forever.
And then, like you said, in the blue black control list, we do see the Chupacabra rear his ugly face and destroy creatures, along with just like you're playing more Essence Scatters in this version. You're not playing the Harness Lightnings. You don't have access to them. You really don't have access to like a premium 2-mana removal spell.
Moment of Craving.
Ooh,
That's
that
a
card though is worth like remembering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because
No, yeah.
the Jim Davis deck we'll talk about here in a minute. Kind of wants you to play that card.
Yeah.
yeah. Giving something a minus is fairly important. And hey, maybe you could just stack them up and kill a Hazoret. You never know.
Yeah, there you go.
It just you have one hanging out in your graveyard, and you cast one, and then flash it back with your Torrential Gearhulk.
Can we talk about the 9th place list?
Yeah, we should definitely mention Merfolk.
Because it's Merfolk, man.
There are a couple of them, or like 3 or 4 in the top 30, or top whatever 21 we got.
Right. So we have
21. Nice round number.
Jim Forgus playing Merfolk. And this is a list that is a lot of creatures, 34 of them, in fact, along with 4 spells, which are 2 Essence Scatter, 2 Unsummon, and then a bunch of and the 22 lands, and like that's your deck. But
he's not playing any repulses.
no, he's not
He's
playing.
not playing any spell pierces in the 75.
Yeah,
I find that to be interesting.
He's choosing to play Admiral's Order.
Yeah, I don't know.
Which I guess if you are predicting that people are going to be on Settle the Wreckage all weekend, then I guess that's the counter spell that you want.
Yeah. One thing that I guess didn't think about with that card, because we talked about it in the first half of the Palooza, was that it also counters like end of turn things. So if your opponent just goes like end of your turn, like Torrential Gearhulk, you'd be like 1 mana counter.
Oh no, for sure, it definitely does that. I just like I want to be able to counter Fumigate too.
Yeah.
He's playing 40
Well,
games.
yeah,
Don't get me
they
wrong.
can do
but
both.
It
can counter Fumigate.
It can for a
cancel
lot
that.
more mana.
So,
So
I think like one card in this list that I guess may have been overlooked. I guess we haven't even gotten a green yet in the Palooza is Jungleborn Pioneer. It's kind of like unassuming. It's 2 colorless and a green for a 2/2, and then when it enters the battlefield, you get a 1/1 Merfolk token with hexproof.
mhm.
And it's just like pretty good in deck like this. Like you just kind of want to go wide. So
no, yeah,
just having,
the
like,
2 bodies, especially when you have things like 4 Deeproot elites, which will trigger twice for that, and
Yeah.
of course,
like Metallic Mimic.
Metallic Mimic,
Yeah.
the Merfolk Mistbinder, the Lord, like those kind of effects are definitely something you're looking for. So for sure. But yeah, Merfolk had actually a pretty good showing. It was also pretty high on the day 2 metagame breakdown list as well. So people wanting that deck to be real, it's probably real.
Well, the only time I saw it on camera, it just got housed by Martyr Vehicles.
Yeah.
But I mean that was one match, so who
Right.
knows? But yeah, I mean I want Merfolk to be good.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Even if it loses the Martyr Vehicles, we're hoping now that we're seeing the development of a healthier meta. So
Yeah.
it's okay if it gets housed by a deck. It just needs to, play in a healthy meta
It
game where it
needs
has
to be good against
other
some of the
decks.
other decks.
Yeah. Which I've played against this deck a lot. We've been playing, or I've been playing a bunch on Moto. I've played against this deck a lot, and it hasn't. I will say this: it hasn't impressed me ever. I don't know. I just like
I want it to be good.
Merfolk is not like doesn't usually impress me. But like I don't know. It's definitely like it definitely can do gross things, and Kumena is real. Kumena is definitely real. So if it's your thing, there you go, Dave. If you want to build Merfolk, it's all yours.
I'm still not building it yet. Still gonna hold off, and we'll see what happens.
See after the next bannings.
Yeah.
Can I mention one more deck before we move to the classic? Because I know I want to get to the Palooza. I want to mention the Black Red mid range deck. The last list they showed. They showed us on camera.
Why?
Honestly, because this is the deck that Morgan and I have been working on. I wrote a piece and submitted it to Legit. It might be up on Legit MTG by the time this podcast goes up. So you can take a look if you like. You can also see that sweet meme I was talking about. So yeah, no fun with that. But this is very similar to what Morgan and I have been working on, which is focusing on Rekindling Phoenixes, Glory Bringers, Chandras, good removal spells, and Treasure Map to go with it. And I this is what I've been playing on Moto and grinding with, and it's been very, very good. And I like where it's at in the metagame, and I was glad to see other it feels nice to like build a deck and then see others building like in similar directions. Like, of course, we're not all the same here. I'm the crazy guy playing Wily Goblin, but I'm just glad to see some decks like this that are able to play in this different space. I will say we saw a 5-0 list that was similar to this on Moto that you had linked me to last week, Morgan.
Yeah.
And it was trying out Tetsamok, and I started trying out Tetsamok. Tetsamok's pretty good, not going to lie. Sometimes you just get to you have to play very carefully with it because like you want to not like cast removal spells when you know you're going to cast Tetsamok, but you need to make sure you hit your 6 land drop on time and aren't just taking a beating out of it. But the times where you get to like they exerted a Glory Bringer and you get to be like, oh cool, I'm just going to pick this off for free, and then you do, and then you have a 6/6 and they're playing things like the Scarab God. And like I said, like if they don't have like Unlicensed Disintegration or Vraska's Contempt, Braids and Fatal Pushes aren't killing a Tetsamok. It's winning in combat against everything, even Gear Hulks, which is pretty relevant. So, all hail Tetsamok.
Yeah, I've been a big fan of that card. So, I just want to say that there are a lot of people out there chomping on our flavor, and it's a good thing, I guess.
I mean, we didn't get out there and do it. We didn't hit the ground running down to Dallas Fort Worth. So
no, we did not.
But I'm not upset about this. Like, I wish that we had a standard open like we've had in years past, so I could be like I love taking a brew out for a spin and being able to do that. But I'm just glad that like it isn't just us trying to like forge this in the format. Like it does seem like there's a place for in the format for it. So
cool. All right, so let's talk about the classic. The classic was a duel in the finals between two mono red decks.
Isn't it always a duel in the finals?
A duel is a whole sentence. A duel between two mono red decks.
Okay. Were they fated to duel?
Maybe.
All right.
I don't know. Depends on if you're a fatalist or not. But Tristan Lube, I'm gonna say. One out. Lube. One out. In the finals, and this is a mono red deck. Tell you what, Hazoret's still a good Magic card.
Tell you what,
but we don't see any sort of splashes or anything like that. We just go up to 5 with Glorybringer and kind of work our way back down with like Hazorets, on-crop Crashers, and we're just trying to get them dead.
Like the most surprising thing in this list is the 4 Invigorate.
It's pretty invigorating to be perfectly honest.
If I remember correctly, that was a card that people started playing because it allowed Hazoret to get through a Whirler Virtuoso. Is that about accurate?
Yeah.
For the most part. I mean, obviously, there's some other spots where it'd be good, but mainly that. Now, see many less Whirler Virtuosos in the format, at least for week 1 here. So I wonder if that is going to be the right way to go with that.
I mean, still gets people dead.
He's not playing. Well, I guess he's playing it over something like Chandra or something, main.
Yeah, but I think if he's going low enough to the ground that it might just be right anyways.
Sure.
So I mean, if your Invigorator Rampage is more often than not just a 4 damage burn spell for 2 mana, then you're probably in the market for it.
Yeah.
So.
And then
it's also really good with things like Carry Zev randomly, like because it has menace.
Yeah,
so
when
when they finally have to double block it, you can just like blow them out with an Invigorator Rampage.
Sure. The second place list here was not quite mono red. It was
I gotta say, second place list. This has to be said. I wish you were playing pirates, but
Yeah, 100%. Salvador Barboza.
that is a pirate name. Like, I'm sorry if you take offense to that. I truly do apologize. But I was like, man, I hope this guy's playing pirates.
No.
there is Jerry T posted a mono red pirates list that would have been hot.
I was looking at this on MTG Goldfish, and this is showing a 55 card deck. So I'm assuming
It's also not showing the sideboard,
Right,
but I think
so-
that was like that on Star City as well. But
Star City has everything as far as I can
okay.
see.
well. So he's running Dragon Skull Summits. What does he have on the board for those?
he's got Scrap Heap Scroungers.
He's-
maybe.
yeah.
Yes,
so-
that's
oh,
there's nothing on the board for it.
Okay, so
It's
just
just
Scrappy,
it's just Scrounger.
Fair enough.
He's playing the Inventor's Apprentice as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing Scrounger and Bomat Courier and 3 PNLRs,
Yeah,
he's got a little more support for it. So.
for sure. But yeah, this is sadly like not even like Kari Zev in the deck, and that's criminal. That's the pirate you get to play for free because
Yeah,
it's
you don't even
good.
have to play a pirate deck. It's just good.
That man, he's just like I understand what my name is. No pirates.
Yeah, no, he was like, no, this is there can only be one. I am the captain now.
But yeah, this is. I mean, they both look like they kind of have different angles to them as far as mono red. So like even between these two lists, even though they're both like mono red decks, they definitely are attacking a little bit of a different angle even when you look at them. So maybe by allowing the mono red decks to diversify and not have to be sort of priced into playing the Ramanop Ruins, you do get a little bit more diversity within them, which is pretty cool. In third place, we see Jim Davis piloting Blue White Auras. Now in the team event, he played a Bant approach list and decided to switch it up a bit and play something that I know he's been playing on his stream a lot, which is this Blue White Auras list. And yeah, it's exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah, he was been calling it heroic, which if you played in the during Theros, like that was a mechanic where if you targeted a creature with heroic, it got some sort of bonus. In this case, with SRAM, when you start casting your auras, you're always up cards. If you have a SRAM and you cast things like Cartouche of Knowledge, you get to draw 2 cards. You also get to play True Name Nemesis in this deck, which is
That's not standard legal.
I mean, Dante's Vanguard is doing pretty good True Name Nemesis impression. Remember how high I was on that card? I'm telling you, man, it's here. So I think this deck is pretty sweet. It definitely is the kind of thing the kind of deck that can do nothing sometimes, but it swarms pretty well and it draws a lot of cards. So, sort of if a boggles / hexproof kind of or so boggles / like I said, like heroic deck, it's sort of your thing. This is here.
I'm all in because it's played a Norton Pouncer, and
That just 'cause Jim Davis has to play cats.
that's fine. I'm all in.
Garfield.
But yeah, I mean, like most everything is going to be getting you value one way or another through either having a bunch of 1-drops that you could easily like put a Curious Obsession with and get your cards back that way, but you're always generating some kind of value with this aggressive deck while pushing forward with your own game plan. And I think that's fairly powerful, and most of your threats are somewhat resilient, or just like have to be dealt with really, really early. But yeah, I think this list is pretty cool, and it's dirt cheap. So if you are,
it says on here it's like $62 in paper, $49 online.
Yeah, so if you are lost and need something cheap for your FNM, there you go. Load that in the TCG player.
I split first at FNM last week, humble brags. Sorry. With this deck. So,
Yeah.
there you go.
It's powerful. It's powerful enough to
I had to get Rekindling Phoenixes for my deck. His deck wasn't worth as much as the Rekindling Phoenixes I needed to get. So who really won? Because it wasn't me.
So what else from the classic do we want to take a look at?
I want to mention Team Dinosaurs, and then we can do.
I was going to mention Green Red Monsters.
Oh, okay. You can talk about. I thought we mentioned that before. Maybe I'm crazy.
It was the green red.
yeah.
We mentioned it,
the
but we
team.
didn't really say what it was. So this is the deck. So Brandon DeCandio played this in the Open,
Right.
and I believe
He's been
this is-
streaming with it online as well.
Yeah, I believe this is his list. Mm-hmm. So Logan Berryman played it to a 5th place finish in the Classic, and just playing a lot of good cards.
Yeah.
It seems like
It's just a bit of a good stuffed out deck focused on creatures.
Yeah, so you have like a lot of cards that just like are good on rate, or just give you value, and it's kind of been the hallmark of good standard decks, like for forever, basically. We have things like Branchwalker, like we mentioned before, or I guess Branchwalker and G-Light Ranger. So you have your Explorer creatures. Playing Scrap Heap Scrounger is kind of like just a value, like it's like very light splash of black just to be able to return Scrap Heap
Yeah, and it's just a high power 2-drop. Like you just want to be, you do want to be playing a lot of things with high power for at least one card in this deck.
Yes,
but
the Heart of Kieran's.
Yeah. But I think this deck is like one of the decks that's like I want all my 2-drops need to either be 3 power or generating me like drawing me a card.
Yeah.
Which is what his 2-drops do, including like the Heart of Kieran, which he can pull off because his 2-drops and up can be 3 power to be able to crew it efficiently.
Right. You have there's one made deck Death Course Scavenger, which is that seems like it might be a flex spot, but
Yeah.
hey, still cruise out of Kieran. It's fine. Pia Nalar's Ronus. We see Ronus kind of making an appearance again.
Ronus can fly that ship.
Yep.
He probably. I now imagine he just like picks it up and just like.
he makes the propeller sound.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Thrashing Brontodon, just a one of. 4 Rekindling Phoenix again.
Yeah.
4 Glorybringer. It seems like this is like going to be the tag team of standard here, where it's like if you're going bigger red, like these are the cards that you're going to want.
Yeah.
And then one Galta Primal Hunger, because
I mean, there is I know that Mike can attest that there are just times where this just hits the board and you're like, cool, I'm dead.
Yeah, that's it.
And then he can also again fly a vehicle. I don't understand how these work.
Can.
They all can.
They all literally to be printed as a creature in Magic.
But you know what? He's got tiny little T-Rex arms. What is he gonna do?
I mean, he's got powerful jaw.
Just puts it in there.
He put jaw on the steering wheel.
Oh man, but I know that Decania really liked this list, and I think these strategies can come back now. Where you're just playing, you don't have to be like
green doesn't have to just be a value color. It can actually be
right.
like a creature based aggressive color.
You don't have to lean so hard on like synergy. You can kind of just be like all these creatures are just good rate creatures. I'm gonna
now
play
some
them.
of these decks like that one does and some of the others we see feel like and to be fair the Black-Red Midrange deck does too, which just feels like it's like mythic deck sometimes.
Yeah, I mean obviously that can be a bit like uncomfortable, but I mean.
How
what are you
many
gonna do?
Good rares and mythics can we jam into a deck with forests?
But I mean that just kind of covers the range of standard. There's some decks that are like that, and then there's some decks that are like Jim Davis's heroic deck, where it's not necessarily really jam packed full of rares, or at least the rares that are in it are affordable at this point in time. So, but I appreciate the diversity. I know we wanted to talk about. Teamer Dinosaurs as well.
I want to mention Teamer Dinosaurs only because some of the cards that we haven't gotten to green yet, but some cards that we had talked about are already in this list, including Reckless Rage, which I said good to see standard play. Yeah, look at that. But I mentioned before to you guys that in testing the Galta Primal Hunger, that's the 12/12 Dino for 12, was actively pretty good. And here we see it like not just like it's a 4 of. It is a straight 4 of this list. And if you would have said before we saw what the format shook out as that 12/12s for 12s would be a 4 of in a deck, you would have been like, okay, yeah, cool. So then you stifle your trigger after you play your Phyrexian whatever whatever it is. I can't think of the name of that card.
Phyrexian, what?
The 12/12
is it Dreadnought? No.
Oh yeah, Phyrexian Dreadnought.
There it is.
Oh, is it Dreadnought?
You know what I mean? So like I think that this deck is pretty interesting doing that, and
I mean it's really good when you play it after you play an alpha. It has
it's unbelievable.
Haste. Yeah, 12/12 trample haste. You're dead. And we also see the only non-dinosaur creature that's able to hang. Of course, is Rekindling Phoenix.
Oh yeah, of course.
I thought you were going to say Drover the Mighty.
Oh well,
not a dinosaur.
He's an honorary dinosaur.
He's literally riding a dinosaur in the art.
Yeah, might as well be human druid dinosaur. Let's be real.
This is hanging out here if you want to know what the blue is, and there's also some negates and Admiral's Order in the sideboard.
Maybe we have to reevaluate that card.
Maybe. This deck seems real loose playing, in my opinion, though, because like I think it's harder to just cast it to cancel in this deck. But
Yeah, blue is a little dicey. I mean, you do have Drover though, right? It taps for any color of mana.
To be fair, Settle the Wreckage is a beating against this deck.
Yeah, absolutely it is. I'm just crazy. I'm just amazed at how many Admiral's orders I'm seeing over things like Spell Pierce. Like it's got to be that much better, I guess.
I mean, it really depends on, I guess, what it is that you're worried about. But it's also just like if you draw like a mid to late game Admiral's Order, it's much better than a Spell Pierce.
That's true.
So like if you're just not trying to win, like Spell Pierce is much better, and well, you usually see it play in things like Modern and Legacy, because those formats, the games only last a handful of turns.
Maybe that's the thing. Like
you have a lot more leverage to use it.
We're so used to seeing Spell Pierce in Modern, where it's like it's going like you're going to cast it and blow your opponent out and going to win, where you might not have that in Standard, where like you can get them with a Spell Pierce but the game still go on long enough where you could theoretically not have them dead. So it could be it.
I guess like the more aggressive your deck is, the better Spell Pierce is.
That's true.
Where this was more of like a mid-rangey deck.
It's playing Carnage Tyrant, so yeah, you're probably right. I do want to mention he has 3 Silent Gravestone in the graveyard, or in the Silent Gravestone in the sideboard, and I don't know how I feel about that card. We haven't gotten to it in the Palooza, but it doesn't turn off Godpharaoh's Gift, which would seem like the only reason to play this card right now.
It doesn't turn it off like when you would want it to.
Right, like it does shut off like the
Scarab God.
The Scarab God, technically, but that doesn't seem like what I want. I mean, I guess if you do that, then you just have a 5/5, and maybe that's what this deck cares about. It just cares about having a 5/5 Scarab God. But unfortunately, a number of the Scarab God decks we saw, especially any of the Grixis ones, also have a Braid, so that feels weird as well. But it just seemed like I'd want something like maybe like I can't think of it now. I was going to call it a Stylus, and that's not what the card is.
The Crook.
Thank you, Crook of.
I like the Stylus of Condemnation, though.
But like, maybe I like that just a little bit better, just because again, this doesn't do anything, at least initially, to Pharaoh's Gift.
Crook is nice because it's obviously targeted, and then like you can have the oh crap button and be like, oh no, everything's gone now. Everything. I don't want anything anymore.
And this does have that too in the draw card, so maybe that's what
a cheaper oh crap button.
Yeah, absolutely. But I just find it to be sort of an interesting sideboard card. So, Dave, do you want to talk about one more deck?
We're gonna wrap this up with
Blue-Red Wins.
Yeah, not to be confused with Blue Skies. It's Blue-Red Wins.
Wins.
That's because of the namesake card.
Wins.
Favorable Wins. Yeah, if you know what that card does, it's a blue enchantment that says creatures of flying get +1/+1, which should tell you most of the things you need to know about this deck.
Warguide Marauder.
Yeah, so we have 3 Hope of Ghirapur, a 1/1 for 1 flyer. 3 Siren Storm Chaser, a 1/1 for 1 flyer.
Bunch of flying men in here.
4 Warkite Marauders, which I'm glad that card saw some play this weekend.
Yes.
4 Whirl Virtuoso, 4 Glorybringer, and 4 Maverick Thopterist. Backed up with some removal, an Aether Sphere Harvester, and favorable wins. So, yeah. This is a deck.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's definitely cool.
It's also another cheap deck.
Oh, yeah. Actually not as cheap as you think. He's playing 2 Chandras in the board.
That's because of the Chandras. You take the Chandras out, it's like that's like a third of the cost.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought your favorite wins is sweet, and Warkite Marauder is sweet. So
I agree.
Warkite Marauder and Glorybringer are best friends because it says I don't care how big you are. I also don't care how much of a Scarab God you are. You are actually dead.
You are 0 when it turns out. And my dragon going to eat you.
You're not coming back.
No more.
Hit the road, Jack. 0 0 1 0 1 0 1 0. Now binary.
No, you're saying something offensive in binary now.
Wow. Okay, offensive. That's immediately where we go.
It could be. You don't know what you're saying.
Palooza.
Yeah. The only other significant standard event that did happen was that there's an online PPTQ, or no, it's just an online PTQ. So if you wanted some more sweet standard information, of course there are the daily deck lists, but it's always good to look at actually what performs well in the PTQs. And that we have the 9-0 list, which was a mono red list as well. So mono red's still good, but this is where we see sort of the Grixis energy lists. Another Marty vehicles, but more of a different sort of outcome than what we have seen previously. So I saw at the Open, at least I should say.
Yeah, and real quick, I mean these Grixis energy lists seem to be a lot more popular online, at least right now, than we saw in the paper events that happened. And these are lists like, unlike the control decks that we talked about, we have like Glint-Sleeve Siphoners, Whirler Virtuosos. Kind of, they play more creatures than spells.
Yes.
This one also, we have Chupacabras and Glory Bringers and things like that.
Yeah.
I think I was gonna say, I think like a lot of people kind of looked to this after the bannings, since the bannings didn't hit anything in this deck. It was like the energy cards were green. So this was already kind of a deck before. That makes sense that at least week 1 people would play it, see if it's better.
Just a random thing real quick. Morgan, I happened to look at, there's a black-red mid-range deck that went 6-3 at the PBTU. Mm-hmm. It's got a couple of sweet spells. One, it's playing a Nicol Bolas Godfrey out of the sideboard. With no actual blue lands.
We're just treasuring it up.
Mapping. But a card that I hadn't thought about, which I think is interesting, he's playing Battle at the Bridge. Just one.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know what Battle at the Bridge does? Kills Hazarets.
It certainly does.
Life.
Also kills True Name Nemesis.
Yes. Yeah.
And you can cast it off of your treasure maps and treasures without having to sack them.
Yeah.
All right, I like that card. That was cool. Okay.
Yeah, and I see a fun thing to try, but again, it's good to see like these sort of things kind of show up. And this list is playing a Cinder Barons. We do want to reiterate, Cinder Barons legal in Standard.
Legal.
Don't forget about it. We obviously have the enemy colored ones that are legal that have been seen playing like green black Constrictor, but. No, don't forget about the Cinder Barons. Very important.
Yeah, don't you forget about Cinder Barons.
Don't.
Don't.
The Nicol Bolas, the God Fair. That's a bold splash.
Oh wow! Dave also alerted to me to another. This says it's Grixis, but it's actually just black red. This is really close.
It's a very light touch of black in this one. It's mostly
just
like
red,
big red, but
he's playing 4 Wily Goblins.
Yeah, we're doing it. We're influencing the meta.
I'm doing it. Play it.
Are you playing Cut to Ribbons in your deck?
Oh
Yes.
yeah.
That card seems nice.
Yeah, you could. The most I've done now is I've killed someone from 14 because I just had I had 5 treasures and just we had drawn way out and it was just oh well cool, let's cut the ribbons now. So
yeah, and honestly, the blue in this list is like the backside of Refuse to Cooperate.
Yeah, I don't know.
So it's really just black red. You maybe you're playing Cooperate, but I doubt it. I doubt it for most of the time.
It would be pretty fun to refuse a Galta, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
It's pretty good. But again, that's another event that you can definitely take a gander at and kind of get an idea of what's happening in Standard these days.
Yeah. We're still trying to gather, information. It's week 1. It's kind of a scramble. Everybody's trying to figure out, what's going to be the thing. So saw a lot of mono red, but we also saw a lot of new things as well. So
Yeah.
we'll see how it shapes up.
Yeah. So now that we're an hour into the podcast, let's go ahead and get started on the back half of the Palooza. Before we do that, I want to, of course, give a shout out to Comic Town, one of our lovely sponsors. This weekend, they actually have a Standard IQ for Star City Games. So definitely check out Comic Town Gaming Center for all the events, all the details of that event.
Yeah, so all these sweet Standard decks we just talked about,
You can play.
pick one, then go to Comic Town and play. Maybe get qualified for an invitational.
Yeah, just write down all the names of these decks, put it into a bucket, and just
Pick one.
Yeah.
do a lottery for yourself.
Start drawing names. All right. So we left off and we were about to head into which color?
Green, correct?
Green. Yep. Let's go. I keep rubbing my eyeglasses on the microphone, so if you're hearing weird squeaks, those are my glasses, but I can hear them, so I apologize.
All right, well, we'll start with a fun new merfolk we talked about a little bit, which is Deep Root Elite. This is a generic and a green for a 1/1 creature merfolk warrior. It says, whenever another merfolk enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target merfolk you control. This card, we saw this I think fairly early in the spoiler process, and it was one of those cards where it would be okay, it's a 2-drop, which is good. It's fairly it's a green and a colorless, is easy to cast, and it has a favorable text box. Will Merfolk be good enough around it? And so far, the verdict seems to be yes. Especially when you have Merfolk Mistbinder, the Lord, which we'll talk about. I think this card is depending on how you want to build the deck. Because obviously we have a couple of different options at the 2-drop that adds counters to things. But I do think that this card it's already shown itself to be playable, but I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, you already have such a great theme with +1/+1 counters in Merfolk. Like, this just kind of helps pile on and has the benefit of, like, you get to pick where you're putting the counters, which I think is obviously, fairly powerful. And kind of what you would want out of this card. I think, like, if this card was, like, didn't have that flexibility, then I'd probably be a little less high on it, but being able to choose is pretty important.
Compared to a lot of other Merfolk, so this is a terrible draw set, like a late game draw.
Yeah.
So there's a downside for this, but when you're playing tribal, you're going for that synergy anyway, so that's going to happen.
It's like a champion of the parish, but you get to spread out the counters.
Yeah. Right.
I think getting to, especially with the way that the sweepers work in this format, getting as Morgan sort of implied, getting to decide what to do with them, you can sort of build your own like board state that your opponent has to cultivate around. So
right, and if the proof is in the pudding because it was played in Jim Forrest's deck, but we do have that advantage.
Yeah, we get to cheat a little bit.
We have the advantage.
Hey, LSV is not done with his constructor review yet.
That's true.
He's only halfway through too, so I don't care. I want to hear it.
But yeah, I think obviously this card is pretty good for the Merfolk tribe. So
yeah.
Next up, Enter the Unknown.
Yeah, Enter the Unknown. So this is a cool card, but I don't think it's actually good enough.
I wanted the only reason I put it in there is because it was getting some talk, and I wanted to also kind of talk about how it's not good.
Okay. All right. So Enter the Unknown. It's a sorcery that costs a G.
1G.
1G. 1 grand.
G unit.
It's very expensive.
Target creature you control explores, and then it also says you may play an additional land this turn. So it's kind of like a one-man explore, and you get to explore.
Wait, that sounds great. Really, why is it bad?
Because you need to have a creature in play.
Yeah, exactly. It has to have a target that you can target. What if this said up to one creature you control explores, you may play an additional land? Is that card a rare now? Or is that card too good?
No, because you have no way to generate... Like, Explore was good
because you drew a card, yeah. So is it still pretty much just as unplayable?
Yeah, I think it's pretty unplayable.
Okay. I'm just trying to workshop this card to be like...
I saw this in a bunch of Merfolk lists in the last week on Magic Online, and it was bad. It was consistently bad.
Why does Merfolk want to ramp up?
I think people just see like one green, some amount of value on, and they want to try it, and I think it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem powerful enough. Like, it's cool. I think it's a cool concept, but it doesn't seem like it's worth a card.
People just want to, like, have, ways to put a land into play.
This is true.
They're just so desperate for, like, a rampant growth or, like, a one-mana elf.
It reads like a card that could be good.
Yeah.
Until you actually establish how it works in practice.
You need a lot of things to line up.
You are literally almost never casting this till turn 3 at the earliest. And then if you don't have another land drop to make, then you've also probably crushed your curve. So I'm good. I'll pass.
Yeah.
But I want to make mention of it only because I had seen, there was enough people saying like, oh, well, what about this? That I wanted to be like, no, you should really think about how this card works.
Yeah.
Also, it's because Dave would have to read it so I could do Galta.
And Galta's not that exciting.
Hey, Galta's a 12/12 for 12.
That's it.
Galta Primal Hunger, we talked about this before, is 10 GG for a 12/12. It costs X less to cast, where X is the total power of creatures you control, and it has Trample, and this is an Elder Dinosaur. I think this was, again, one of the first cards we literally saw from this set, and when you looked at it, it looked sort of just like, oh, this is a big, I think we literally said on here, this is just a big dumb green guy, who knows. But looking at how the format's shaping up with a lot of those mid-range matches, and how easy this is to cast out of certain decks, especially dinosaur decks, when you think about cards like we said Regisaur Alpha, Ronus, it makes this card much easier to cast, and sometimes it just has haste. And any sort of mid-range mirror, especially when opponents are playing things like Lightning Strike and Abrade and stuff like that, you don't beat this card.
Yeah. And like Lightning Strike and Abrade are cards that are in general not good against your deck anyway, so like you're just adding insult to injury. Not that card.
If you did that, this would hit for 24.
That's true.
So like
that's very powerful. But you're really kind of taking the already disadvantage they have and like kind of ramping it up.
Yeah, for sure. So I will say, coolest thing I've gotten to do with this card is take it from my opponent and hit them for lethal with a Ongroth. They were at 16, and I had a Phoenix in play, and they attacked and then cast this and passed turn, and I just slammed the Ongroth and ticked down and hit him for 16. It was one of those games on Magic Online where your opponent just doesn't leave the game immediately. They just sit there, and like you get the satisfaction of knowing
like
they were sitting in their chair. They were just like, what happened? It's like, yeah, I did it.
Yeah, sometimes, hijack is just pretty good.
You know what? When it hits for 12, it certainly is. All right, next up.
All right, next up, Jadelight Ranger. So this is a card we talked about
Already.
showing up in many deck lists.
Guess what? It's still good.
Not surprising. I think this is one of the best cards.
Up too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is one of the best cards in the set.
Being that I definitely bought some for 10 on Friday and don't feel bad about it. Yeah, that's probably pretty good.
Yeah, so Jadelight Ranger, it's 1 green for a 2/1 Merfolk Scout. When it enters the battlefield, it explores, then it explores again.
The Alex Bertoncini of Magic cards.
2 explores.
2 explores.
Not to be confused with Enter the Unknown, which is none.
None.
It's not explorers.
0 explores.
Yeah, it sounds like a pretty straightforward card, but there actually is a lot of play to this where, like, it could be a lot of different things. It could, draw you 2 cards. It can be a 4/3 for 3 mana.
Yeah.
It could be a 6/5 for 3 mana if you have a Winding Constrictor. So it's pretty good.
Yeah, and
I think also just say a 2/1 that draws 2 lands, which is also fine.
Yes, is also perfectly good.
Build your own Yafamai Elder.
Right. But yeah, I think like this card has a lot of versatility, and then we just had a 3 mana card that had a lot of versatility kind of get banned. It had a home built into it, basically coming in, and it does similar things that we would see. Rogue Refiner sort of kind of do.
It smooths out draws for
yes.
sure.
I was going to say, so like Jadelight Ranger just kind of like walking through the forest, sees like some blue and green shoes just sitting there, like, let me feel these shoes.
Shoes. Kicks the blue one away. Like, actually, I just need 2 green shoes.
I just need 2 green shoes, yeah.
Oh, look. Weird. There's 4 sets of shoes here.
But,
I do want to make mention quickly of Jade Bearer and Jungle War Pioneer, just because these are both merfolk that are seeing play. I didn't have them on here initially.
Role players, yeah.
But Jade Bearer is a green 1/1 for green for a 1/1 merfolk. When it enters the battlefield, you can put a +1/+1 counter on another target merfolk, which makes it it's not a great 1-drop, but it does sequence well, especially on turn 3 when you want to play 2 merfolk.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jungle War Pioneer, which we talked about, is a 2/2. That also makes a 1/1 blue hexproof merfolk. So
comes with a friend.
And again, those both work pretty well with the already mentioned Deep Root Elite. So.
Yeah, I mean, Merfolk is kind of the go wide, the go wide strategy that seems to be prevailing. You would think that black white vampires would be that, but when you see the actual constructed decks, like the 34 creature like constructed deck, like. That's what Merfolk wants to do. They want to have a lot of bodies. So this is the Pioneer helps out with that. And then again with the +1/+1 counter themes, the Jade Light Bear plays into their themes. I do wish it was like a 2/2 for 2 that did that, so it could be like a bear.
Anyways,
I don't think we've really seen the list for vampires yet, so I wouldn't write off vampires just yet, but.
I do want to make mention that Naturalize is also back, just regular old Naturalize.
Get better art.
It is a dinosaur breaking a pirate's cutlass.
It's bad art,
but it's still funny at least.
It's bad art though.
All right, whatever. We talked about Polyraptor when we talked about Red.
Oh, just for fun, if you do want to see something, hear about something funny, PV got to assemble that combo in limited at the GP. So congrats to PV for living the dream.
All right. Next card we have is Swift Warden. Kind of surprised this is on here. Swift Warden is 1 green for another merfolk. It's a 3/3 with flash. When it enters the battlefield, target merfolk you control gains hexproof until end of turn.
So this is one that didn't really show up this week, but
yeah, I think this one's kind of in an awkward spot on the curve because you have Kumina at the 3-drop spot. You can play Jadelight Ranger in the 3-drop spot.
Yeah,
it's the same mana cost. So this one, I think this one is going to be tough to break in just because there are so many other things competing for that same spot in the curve.
Yeah,
I mean, it might show up as like a 1 of, I could see, like, or maybe like you just play a couple of them, just keep your opponent honest. But
And something I think that the card that actually sort of stole this one's thunder is Juggle Board Pioneer.
Yeah, interestingly enough, you're probably right, because this is one of those ones that I think people were higher on before we did, like before the Open this weekend, and now it sounds like, oh well, you said like I don't know why they play it.
I think another thing that hurts this a lot is that Merfolk's not really an instant speed style deck.
Sure.
It's more of just your traditional like, all right, I'm just going to play out my creatures on my own turn. So if you're like holding up 3 mana, it's going to look like really suspicious. It's like, okay, you didn't play a creature.
Does this one look better for possible modern playability? You're already playing a couple of lords that are on 3, and in that case, you're just holding up a vial, and it gets to counter a rule spell.
I don't think so. Okay. Ultimately, I don't think it's like you could just play another redo or something. Just
I'm
just saying. I'm just being honest.
I just assume that this card shot stars at the opposing Pokemon.
Nice, never misses.
It does never miss.
All right. Next up, we have Thrashing Brontodon. This is a generic green for a 3/4 creature dinosaur that has 1 generic. Sacrifice it. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. Always a welcome piece of text on a creature.
It's pretty good in Dave's Cube.
Yeah, it is really pretty good in Dave's Cube. I think like every time we see something like this, like every version of this has just been playable in some way, right? Like obviously
the Kasali Pride.
Yeah, that was the best. But even what was the one you remove a counter from?
Wickerborough.
Yeah, like they all just seem fine. So yeah, this is a 3/4 for 3, which is already good, and then it gets to interact with things like Heart of Kirin and such. So yeah, all around good card, and saw a bunch of play this weekend.
Yeah,
so showed up both in main decks and in sideboards.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So. Interestingly, not in the main deck of the only dinosaur deck we talked about, though. What's up, dinosaurs? What, you don't like your Brontodons? You just like meat eaters? That's offensive.
That's offensive.
All right, next up we have Thunderherd Migration. This is kind of the rampant growth of the set. And Mike, all right, there we go.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So I'm looking at Mike's computer, and he went off the page there. Thunderherd Migration. It's a colorless and a green sorcery. As an additional cost to cast Thunderherd Migration, reveal a dinosaur card or pay 1, and then you search your library for a basic land, put into play, tapped, shuffle your library. So. It can be just rampant growth if you have a dinosaur. If you don't, it's a bad rampant growth. Cost 3. I mean, obviously, if you're playing a dinosaur deck, this is probably something you're going to be interested in, since a lot of the good dinosaurs cost like 4 and 5 mana. So,
once again, the dinosaurs list we saw was playing this card.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, it's probably very much limited to those decks, but. I said before we actually saw an Open this weekend, there were some decks running around in Standard that I was seeing online that were really strange ramp decks that were going all the way up to the 9/9, and they were playing this card, but I don't know if that's anything you'll ever see. So, last one for green is Wayward Swordtooth, which is 2 generic green for a 5/5 creature dinosaur. It has Ascend. You can play an additional land on each of your turns, and it can't attack or block until you have the City's Blessing.
Swordtooth, Lost but Seeking.
Yeah. I think this one is somewhat interesting. 3 mana 5/5 sounds great, obviously, with that rider. But we've already seen that they go, if you want your deck to hit Ascend, it can. But there are some interesting cards in this standard that I don't know what it would take for the deck to accumulate or to happen. But we have Ramanov Excavator. We have things like the black card we discussed last week, where you can pitch land, you can pitch cards to explore. There are, if someone wants to go really deep into this, even the next card, which is World Shaper, which is a card we're not really talking about, but does put cards in your graveyard and brings lands back into play. So if someone is going to play this sort of, unfortunately the Gitrog monster did rotate.
What a crime!
But we've already seen Ramen of Excavator.
How did I know you were going there?
Well, I'm just saying. To be fair, I did that recently in a buddy of ours cube, and my gosh, it was so great. But people have been trying in all formats to try Ramen of Excavator. It's all play in Legacy this weekend. It obviously is play in Modern. Like, that effect is powerful enough, and when you can play 2 lands. We have cycling lands still in the format. We have lands that have a bunch of activated abilities. We have Evolving Wild, stuff like that. So
you have what's that card? The Ghost Quarter.
You have Field of Ruin.
Yeah, Field of
obviously
Ruin.
Good
That's
with that. So I do think that, like, what that sounds fragile. Don't get me wrong. You're playing 2 3-drop green guys. It doesn't exactly. But I think that it wouldn't take very much for someone to try pushing that deck. And at the worst case scenario, once you hit Ascend, then you just start drawing 5/5s off the top of your library later. Which, the bane of these kind of cards is that, like, they're not good later. When it's like, oh, I don't need to use the lands anymore. It's like, okay, well, now you just have 5/5s.
Yeah.
So it's still not the worst.
Perfectly fine.
So that's green.
Yeah, and I think green got some pretty cool things. Like, we see, we've already seen kind of what happened, and a lot of the heavily played cards from Rivals were green cards. So,
Jade Light Ranger.
And even random commons too. So
Yeah.
when it comes to Merfolk.
for sure. Next up, we have multicolored. Now, do you guys want to talk about like the flip enchantments?
So I did an order of what WotC's site has, which is multicolored first, then flip. So that's why it's set up like that. But.
So we could talk about. I think we can knock out some of the flip cards pretty easily and pretty quickly if we talk about them all as a group because they're all enemy colored flip lands.
I don't think we should talk about all as a group because some of them.
Sure, we could talk about like I know that the red white one is worth talking about for sure. So why don't we start with that? So it's Path of Metal is the first one. Is the first side, I should say.
Sure. So we have Path of Metal is a legendary enchantment, cost red-white. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each creature that doesn't have first strike, double strike, vigilance, or haste. Then whenever you attack with at least 2 creatures that have first strike, double strike, vigilance, and or haste, transform it. It transforms into Metzali, Tower of Triumph. It's a legendary land.
Tower of Turnips.
Tower of Turnips. Adds 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, or has 1 in a red to tap. It deals 2 damage to each opponent, or it has 2 in a white tap, and then choose a creature at random that attacked you this turn. Destroy that creature.
It's that attack this turn. Doesn't have to be you. You could destroy your own creature.
Sure, you can destroy your own. Yeah, sure.
If you're that kind of, if we want to challenge, you want to turn on hard mode.
Yeah, you attack with like Academy Rector, or this is like Commander.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and then kill it.
I think we all agree that this card sort of read like gibberish when we first read it, and then I started seeing it, and Morgan started seeing it, and decks that could set up for it. And when the decks that could set up for it, when they get to flip this early, it's actually the land is the mythology is insane.
Crazy. Yeah, we don't have Ramunap runes anymore, so it's kind of.
And I think that's key too. Like you mentioned that earlier. Without Ramunap runes, now you just have a land that does this 2 damage by itself. It's kind of crazy. Now I will say, Mark Rosewater's article this week about the different cards, like their design stories, made this card make a little more sense to me because essentially that. This whatever this is within the city is a trap that only the fast could get through. So the idea is that only the fastest creatures can make it to the Tower of Triumph. Thus, if they have first strike, which represents speed, double strike represents speed, haste, and vigilance all represent speed. Anybody else who doesn't have that speed gets hit by the booby traps. Thus, they take 1. So I thought that was at least kind of interesting, but it still reads like gibberish.
Oh yeah.
But it's easy to flip. Like if you look at red and the way that the red's keywords are set up right now,
a lot of haste creatures,
a lot of random first strike creatures.
You got Karizev, you got
Bomat Courier,
you get the Raptor.
The Raptor that has vigilance. We also have the Fanatical Firebrand, the 1/1 Goblin that's the Mog Fanatic. So when I first saw this deck, I was like, okay, that's cute. And then they flipped this land on me, and I went, oh.
Yeah, it's that land is like we said, very like it's the backside of this card is just worth it, like 100%. It's a clock and it's a way to defend yourself, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, maybe she was born with it. Maybe it's Metzali.
So, yeah, I think you just kind of like
killed myself.
Like as a whole, this card has kind of like everything that you would want in a constructed card. Like it's cheap. The 1 damage effect like isn't nothing. Like that could actually come into play. Not hard to flip, and it has a good payoff. So it's like it's all the things like this would actually reward you for branching off from like mono red to playing like white red, or like splashing white.
It's also crazy because it does things like the thing that we've all like that you forget about this card is like, so if you went Guy on turn 1 and then Guy turn 2 and this turn 3, right? Well, if depending on what you did, you could play another 2-drop on that turn if you wanted, and it also ramps you to things like Glorybringer,
Yeah,
So
because it's just a land.
It just also just a land that ramps you. So it's fairly crazy. Next up, we should mention Profane Procession, because this is also seeing constructed play.
It's definitely bomb unlimited.
It's seeing constructed play. I'm telling you right now. It's seeing play in the tokens deck, and there's also a couple black-white control decks that are running around that are just, it's all in on this card.
Yeah, that is somewhat surprising to me. I thought this card would be a little too slow, but why don't you say what it does?
It's a generic white and a black for a legendary enchantment. It has an activated ability of 3 generic white-black, exile target creature. Then, if there are 3 or more creatures exiled with Profane Procession, transform it. And it turns into Tomb of the Dusk Rose, which can tap to add any mana or 1 mana of any color, or it has an activated ability of 2 generic white-black, tap, put a creature card exiled with this permanent onto the battlefield under your control. Specifically on Magic Online this week, the deck that I dealt 14 to with it, Cut the Ribbons, was a deck that was running all this and almost no creatures. And it was just a white-black control deck. But there are a bunch of tokens deck that are playing this as a 1 or 2 of, because they're already playing a bunch of do-nothing enchantments anyways. But yeah, it is incredibly slow, but it, in these grindy games, and we just saw that Standard looks, there's a lot of aggressive red decks, but there's also a ton of mid-range. This is the kind of card where if you're in those sort of sloggy stalls, people are playing Rekindling Phoenixes, the Scarab God, exiling them for 5 mana. You're already close to doing that with Vraska's Contempt anyways, and this is card advantage on a stick. It's just very slow. I think it's a card that needs to be remembered, and you shouldn't be that surprised when it's resolved against you.
Right. Yeah, like I said, I was a little surprised. Like when I first saw this card, I was like, I guess it's powerful, but it, cost 8 mana to exile your first creature.
The key here is though that it costs 8 mana, but whenever we see a card like this that has that card advantage built in, like it does and it doesn't. It costs 8 mana total for sure to do the first one, but because you could just play this on turn 3 when the board is slower, and then this is always there. Yeah. If you are playing a deck that is designed to get to board stalls to eliminate what the opponent's doing, then you all of a sudden you end up this play where if you have an empty board with this card, what can your opponent do?
Yeah, so you're gonna want to play this alongside, Fumigate or Settle the Wreckage, maybe
Which
just
this tokens deck does.
Yeah. So you just slow the game down, and then you still have this in play.
Yes.
You get to pick off whatever else they have.
And don't get me wrong, you can't play
sense.
a bunch of them. Like, this is a do nothing otherwise. And on a contested board, you're not going to have the time to spend your whole turn taking off for this.
Right.
But like the deck that I've seen this in twice now is playing a bunch of Arch of Eraskas as well, which we'll get to. But it once it gets to 5 mana, it's looking to either do this or force you not to make a play and draw a card. And it's a fine play pattern.
Yeah.
So,
and Morgan, you mentioned Unlimited. I did catch at GP Indianapolis where Owen Turnwall had this against Andrew Cuneo, and it was just like looking really bad for him, and they just played like Profane Procession. It was just like, yep, it just took over the game completely.
I think there were 2 cards that LSV rated as like Y. Like he actually rated them as Y with a big question mark, and it was Tetsamok and and this. So, I think the only one we should talk about on its own is probably Azor's Gateway.
We covered that. We did artifacts already.
Oh, did we put that in artifacts?
Yep.
Oh, that's right, because we started with them. I'm sorry.
I don't think we talked about this one though, because this one's in the flip. We only talked about.
Oh, did we? No, we didn't. We didn't talk about artifacts. Talk about lands.
Yeah, I was gonna
that's
say,
the only thing we did.
Yeah,
okay.
I was gonna say because we didn't. Yeah.
So yeah, we'll talk about Azor's Gateway.
I love this card, but I don't think it's going to be good enough.
Made it Mike Sigur's top 10 cards for standard.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. But
right.
He also didn't have Phoenix on his list.
That's true. He didn't. So he's a sicko.
All right. Azor's Gateway is a legendary artifact, costs 2, has an activated ability of 1, tap, draw a card, then exile a card from your hand. If cards with 5 or more different converted mana costs are exiled with Azor's Gateway, you gain 5 life, untap it, and then transform it. And transforms into
the Green Ranger. What?
Tommy, what are you doing there?
Looking for work?
Yeah. Sanctum of the Sun. Legendary land. Has the ability of tap, add X mana of any one color to your mana pool, where X is your life total. So, yeah. Pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Pretty big payoff for having this slow kind of loot thing in play. Now, I think this is a really cool card. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be as easy to flip as it might seem.
I don't think it matters.
You think you just like flip it whenever?
So I've already seen a couple of versions of like the red-black mid-range deck that's trying out a couple of this card over the treasure map.
With cut to ribbons?
With cut the ribbons is hilarious. But in all seriousness, this is just a loot effect, and it gives it to any color.
Yeah.
So it's not card advantage. Obviously, it's selection, but it does allow some decks to do some interesting things. It may not see play, but I do think that it is worth remembering, and I wouldn't be surprised when you see it. It's probably in small numbers, to be fair. It's legendary as well, which makes it a little bit difficult. But.
Yeah, it being legendary on both sides.
Right.
Yeah.
I want this card to be good. I think it's really cool. I like the flavor of it. This is Azor is the creature with the built-in Sphinx's Revelation, as you might remember. So like it's kind of flavorful. You add X equal to the life total. Then if you have Sphinx's Revelation, you can double. Yeah, but I think it takes too long to get online, and there are a lot of braids floating around.
That's true, but I mean, treasure map's very good. Now, granted, there's a little window for them to hit.
Right, yeah. This one sticks around a lot longer than treasure map.
But I just wouldn't be surprised to see play. Other than that, I don't think Golden Guardian's going to see play, unfortunately. I don't think Storm of the Vault's going to see play. Journey to Eternity, maybe at some point, and Hadana's Climb, I think, is pretty close, but we talked about that one.
Yeah.
So.
Journey, there just needs to be, like, a little bit more. Like, you have Journey, and you have, like Liliana, but you just don't have a critical amount of, like, ways to bring something back. You know how the payoffs you might need for it. There's just more efficient ways to go about doing the things that are like that, I guess. So
it needs to not be an aura.
That's probably true as well.
That's the biggest mark against it. Is
Path to Rebirth. This isn't.
I wish that we had Mana Dorks still, because then I think that might have a chance, because maybe you can get it early under removal.
Yeah,
and then.
Green's really underrepresented in standard. I think we
we really need to get a Llanowar Elf in play.
Yeah, we really need to make Green playable again.
That's what it would. That's what it would. I really feel like that's what it would require, is you being able to like cast this on turn 2. So.
All right, now I understand why Morgan wanted to swap around, because he ended up giving me Ongroth. So
perfect.
I was actually going to give that one to you.
I appreciate it.
But that's fine. You can have it anyways.
So moving back to multicolored for real, then we have Ongroth the Flame Chain, which is a Planeswalker, 3 generic black-red. It starts with 4 loyalty. Legendary Planeswalker, don't forget they're legendary now. Mm-hmm. +1, each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life. -3, gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap it. It gains haste until end of turn. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step if it has converted mana cost 3 or less. And -8, each opponent loses life equal to the number of cards in his or her graveyard. We talked about this a little bit when it first got spoiled. This is one of the cards that got me wanting to, me and Morgan both wanting to try out the red-black deck, just because I wanted to try out this card. And I think it's a pretty good Planeswalker. It's compared to some of the other 5-drop walkers we've had, where we sort of got annoyed with the whole tick up, draw a card, do this. This has some game to it. The tick up is card advantage, but in a different sense. And the -3 has proven to be really powerful. Like, I already told you about how I was able to take a 12/12 and beat an opponent. And you might say, well, that's not realistic. Well, there's a deck, we just saw 4 12/12s in it, so it's there. But you also get to do cool things, like against the heroic deck, for example. Adanto's Vanguard's hard to deal with until you take it and hit them and sacrifice it. That feels pretty good. Also, I don't know if you could draw off the Curious Obsession or not. I don't remember, because they control it. I have to look at the wording of Curious Obsession.
You control it when...
No, the Curious Obsession. It depends on how it reads.
If the creature gains the ability. Yeah.
I've said before, you can also tick down, if you have a Glorybringer on your side and you've exerted it, and you untap and you play an Ongroth, you can tick down on your Glorybringer and exert it again. Which is...
for just to confirm, with Curious Obsession, the creature gets it.
Yeah, sick. Yeah. There you go. You get to draw it. So that's great. And while you don't, we talked before, you don't judge a Planeswalker by its ultimate. If you are sequencing this against, especially against like control decks where you've been ticking up consistently, if you're threatening on 8 and you've ticked up 4 times to do this, there's a good chance you're pressuring lethal with just this card. So it's not great in all board states. Hyper aggressive decks kind of laugh at this card because they won't have cards in hand, and the -3 only picks off 1. But if you can protect this a little bit, or you can bring it down with only 1 creature it can deal with, Ongroth can really steal games, and I've really enjoyed playing with it so far.
Yeah,
card's sweet.
I think you're much more qualified to talk about this card than I am, since
I actually wrapped myself in some red hot chains just so I could feel his pain and yelled at my computer.
This is just, I mean, to be fair, like this is just
like
Kratos from God of War, mixed with a Minotaur. So what's this kind of chopping Sony's flavor?
It was crazy. I was yelling, and then my wife came and I was like, "Get out!" It was bad.
You were method acting Angrath.
I went full Daniel Day-Lewis.
Is that Magic movie still happening, or is that gone?
Yeah, well, we're just waiting for Daniel Day-Lewis to finally awaken as Jace. That's what we've been waiting this whole time. He's been off searching for his spark. That's what he's been doing. So,
I'm not going to talk about this card.
You don't want to?
As a connoisseur, it is a fine limited card.
I think based on what we've seen for dinosaurs, it doesn't look like Naya. You don't have enough of a pull to go Naya for this card to be good enough. I agree.
Yeah. I think you just play the Drover anyway. Like it's
Drover and probably
mana guy.
And Drover and probably the red one, right? The Taskmaster or whatever it is. I don't remember what it is now.
I don't know. I want to talk about this cool card.
Go for it.
This cool card that probably won't see any play, but it's cool. Azor the Lawbringer. So it costs 2 white, blue. It's a legendary Sphinx. It's a 6/6 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent can't cast instant or sorcery spells during that player's next turn. And then whenever Azor attacks, you may pay X white, blue. If you do, you gain X life and draw X cards. So this is the 6/6 flyer with a Sphinx's Revelation tacked on if you get to attack with it. Now, Patrick Sullivan made a good point in his rant on Ravenous Chupacabra that like it's cards like this that kind of get crowded out by Chupacabra being a thing in the format. But I do think it's good enough to see some play, and even if that is out of the sideboard, against non-black deck or whatever, where you don't have to worry about that kind of thing. It's pretty powerful, and like if you do get to attack once with it, the game may be put out of reach. So,
if anybody who's cast said like Sphinx's Revelation once, you can put a game out of reach. But I agree with you seeing play. Godfarrow's Gift also could look at effects like this where you don't have to have any mana tapped on your turn when you get to bring this back.
I like that.
So that's nifty. Plus, technically,
and it just enters the battlefield too. It's not
you
even
could get the first trigger, and you could also like turn off their next turn depending on what they're doing. But I don't know if that's it has to fight with like Angel Invention for slots, which is tough. But
I can see it being like a one of.
But it being just a 6/6 flyer is really relevant in the format. We just talked about how like Unlicensed Disintegration slowly making a comeback. You obviously have Vraska's Contempt as sort of the go-to removal spell right now, but again, decks full of Lightning Strikes and Abrades and these things, they might not be able to deal with this card.
Yeah, you talked about Tetzamach just being a house just by
as
virtue
6/6.
of being a 6/6. Yeah,
and this is the same thing, and just like gets you some value if you get to untap with it. So I think Azor has a chance, and if it doesn't, it's sad. But if it does, tell us your stories of living the dream, please.
If anything, I mean, this is like one of the biggest limited bombs, right? Like if you get this thing.
Oh yeah, that's fine. Blue White already wants to be Blue White Skies, so I'm all in for this. Yeah. Next up, we'll talk about Elenda the Dusk Rose, which saw a big old blank this weekend. But 2 generic white-black for a 1/1 legendary creature vampire knight. It has lifelink. Whenever another creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Elenda the Dusk Rose. And when Elenda dies, create X 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink, where X is Elenda's power. Also, I want to say Glenn Elenda every single time I say this name.
No, Glenn was the husband, right? It's a Glenn the Dusk Rose.
Or Glenda.
Like,
I just want to say Glenda the Good Witch.
He's hanging out with Steve the Aeon Storm.
Elenda. So Elenda definitely is 4 mana 1/1s. We talked Bishop of Binding is not exactly where we want to be. Though technically, as a 4 mana 1/1, it does always bring at least one token with it. The fact that this gets pumped by their Lord effects, your 2 mana Lord, which we are getting to, Legion Lieutenant, Metallic Mimic, things like that help this. And it does. This is the kind of card that's interesting to me because if your first few turns were assembling a board as a vampires player, right? Because you're probably swarming, right? In those colors, you're swarming. Then if this is your 4-drop, Like, you play this before you attack, and then your opponent has to make the decision of, do they interact with the board state you have, or do they kill the thing that's going to be a threat later? And either way, you're more, unless it's an exile effect, they're going to get at least, or you're going to get at least a creature out of it. And if they choose to just ignore it and go after the other things, they still have to figure out a way to deal with the Elenda without it, without very gently trying to not pop the balloon, so to speak. So the card seems powerful, and obviously it's a mythic for a reason, but I don't know. It feels close, but is it close enough? Is it good enough?
I don't know, man.
I mean, vampires don't seem to possibly be good enough, so there's that. But
yeah, this card can be very powerful. I just think it's awkward that you need other things to make it good.
Yeah, you need. Yeah, that's definitely
obviously,
true.
But
yeah, otherwise it's a 4-mana. What? What's the 1/1 that makes a token? From Innistrad, Doom Traveler.
Doom Traveler, yeah.
Which Elenda went to Oraska, so I mean, could very well be a Doom Traveler. But I don't know. Again, maybe it seems play, maybe it doesn't. But it seems powerful.
Yeah. This is a card that's just like, keep in mind, Sam Black will probably break this card somehow. But
well, they'll reprint Cartel Aristocrat next set, and
I mean, honestly, all it really takes is a card like that
it's true.
To take this card from being like not seeing any play or fringe play.
I don't know if we're gonna get a card like that for a while. The last time they printed a card like that, Nantuko has broke the format. So
yeah. Though they did like fulfill the prophecy of what was that card? The Rally of the Ancestors or whatever.
Yeah,
the card that I said was like broken, like in that Palooza. And
you called it your sleeper. That's true.
Yeah, it didn't do anything for like a year, and then it's like, oh hey, look, you can just win. Anyway, next on the list here we have Huatli, Radiant Champion. So it's two green and a white for a legendary planeswalker. Starts off with 3 loyalty. We have a +1 of put a loyalty counter on Huatli Radiant Champion for each creature you control. -1 of target creature gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. And a -8 of you get an emblem with whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. So Huatli saw a big fat 0 in week 1. I kind of have gone back and forth on this card. Like when I first saw it, I was like, I don't know, doesn't seem that good. Like needs a lot of help for it to be good. But then got to thinking of it's like it doesn't actually need that much help to be good. Like there are actual scenarios where like you could play this, do the +1, and actually get it to ultimate the next turn, and then for the rest of the game you're just like outcarding.
Yeah, but if you tick up and you get to ultimate the next turn, that means you had minimum 4 guys already in the battlefield. Do you need to draw a card each time something comes in? Like, I agree with you. That's my difficulty in assessing this card. Now, I do think there's at least one deck in Standard that probably does want this card. There's the green-white Cats deck that's seen a bunch of at least online play. Yeah, Morgan's talked about it before. I think he's probably looking at it on his phone right
once
now.
Or twice. Yeah. Cats have a lot of cats have lifelink. And even the -1.
Are you talking about like the Willy Idol green white deck?
The appeal to authority deck.
Yeah.
It was already playing the effect that's +X and does this. So Huatli seems to have a deck there ready made for it, but at the same time, like, does that deck want to play? Like, I don't know. There are certainly matchups where you want that ultimate, but there's also a bunch of matches where you could play this and it doesn't do anything. For multiple reasons. Like, you already won the game because you have 5-6 creatures in play, or you don't have any creatures in play and your opponent does not care that this exists.
You know what, though? In a way, that's what makes this an interesting card, because it's not just obvious in your face, like Chandra Torch of Defiance, that's just like, okay, yeah, this card's obviously busted.
That also didn't see play for like 6 months after it got printed.
That wasn't her fault.
I'm just saying, though, like, sometimes obviously busted still doesn't matter.
Right. But I guess, all right, Chandra is a more generically powerful card,
yes,
where
absolutely.
you can put it into multiple different decks. This one is obviously requires it to be built around to some
its
extent.
ceiling is a niche deck that was built around it.
Right.
It's sick.
So, but I'd rather Planeswalkers be this than just Jace the Mind
I
Sculptor.
I absolutely agree with you on that, and I also enjoy the art of 3 Huatlis howling at Dinosaur Moon. But You know that's what that art is. It's technically the whatever is
The legendary.
or whatever.
Three Hoatlis.
It's Hoatli and three dinosaur moon howl. I don't know what you want to say.
Isn't that the what's the? Just scroll down. What's that?
No, it is.
No, that's what it is. I'm referring to three rules Silent Moon, man.
Yeah. Three dinosaurs howl at Hawaii.
Like it's the shirt that everybody owns or everyone's dad
No,
owns for some reason. You didn't act like you were acknowledging what it was.
No,
so
there's a card in the set.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
telling
what
you,
we were
the art
referencing.
just looks similar.
Yeah,
I understand
yeah.
that it's Sakuma or whatever it is.
Got it.
God,
Just over an hour and a half in, guys. Let's fight about this.
By the way,
you could pay attention to the cards we're talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm trying to back you up.
Get off your phone. I call you out.
Morgan's been real silent over here.
Hawaii's
What
bad.
is
Why are we
it?
continuing to talk about this card? It's a bad card. Moving on.
Wow. That's the take we got.
Morgan
out of him.
dropping the
All right,
hammer.
next up is Kumena, Tyrant of Araska.
Good card. We could talk a bunch about this one.
It's a generic green-blue for a 2/4 legendary creature Merfolk Shaman. It has 3 activated abilities. The first one is tap another untapped Merfolk you control. Kumena can't be blocked this turn. The other one is tap 3 untapped Merfolk you control, draw a card. And the last one is tap 5 untapped Merfolk you control, put a +1/+1 counter on each Merfolk you control. Yeah, definitely good. 3 mana 2/4, it survives Sweltering Suns. It makes all your Merfolk better either by giving you more cards or pumping them. Seems like a slam dunk. It being a legend hurts it a little bit.
Sure. But most of the time, I feel like you're going to be drawing cards, and that's why, like, another reason why we even circle back to the Pioneer. Like, that's another reason why that card's so great. It's just more bodies to enable this card.
Sure.
Which is awesome.
I feel like the stats on this card were very carefully chosen. Like 2/4 is kind of an odd, like,
Oh yeah,
it's an odd combination for a card that
wants to attack.
If
It makes itself unblockable.
Yeah,
wants to attack.
exactly. But if you think about the commonly played removal, you have Fatal Push requires a little bit of work to be able to kill this. Harness Lightning, you need more than just the energy from Harness Lightning to be able to kill it. A Braid doesn't kill it. Shock doesn't kill it. Magma Spray doesn't kill it. So yeah, I think like it could have been. They could have printed it as a 2/3, and they were probably like, you know what? Let's give that extra toughness to just make
To
sure
really
that it's
make
easy
sure.
to play.
Yeah. I think about a card like what was the 2/3 that whenever you played your second spell, you could draw a card.
Yeah, I was sad about that one.
Give that one a fourth
Jorian.
Jorian.
Yeah, give that one a
Diver.
fourth toughness.
Yeah.
I did play that card in a modern tournament.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't play modern. I played in the standard, but
Yeah.
I
was bobbled.
don't know if I agree that you're all, like yes, a lot of times you are drawing cards, but like I think the way the Merfolk deck is set up, you're probably just attacking. So,
I mean, obviously, it depends on the board state, but
but it is it's nice that you can just decide. You just decide.
Yeah.
So yeah, Cometa, I think obviously good. The Merfolk decks have already shown that they want to play this card, and I think it's like over a $20 mythic at this point. So
There's a 4 of in that deck.
yeah, for sure.
$20 really.
Yeah, it's expensive. Again, that's how Merfolk is going to work. Like you're going to have the couple bubble cards, and then everything else is common uncommons. So
Yeah.
You want to talk the next two together?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Legion Lieutenant and Merfolk Mistbinder. These are 2-mana lords and the Vampire and Merfolk tribes. So Legion Lieutenant, obviously black-white. Merfolk Mistbinder, blue-green. And they both say other vampires you control get +1/+1, or other Merfolk you control get +1/+1. So yeah, these much like the stats on Kumina. These feel like they might have been like late plants into the set. Like, yeah, we really need to push these tribal synergies, so let's like throw some lords in there. So 2-mana lords.
I think that they're there because they are the two tribes that
Try to
the
go wide.
lords make sense. Where like this is the tribes that would be the most powerful thing that you can do,
Pirates and Dinos already got lords.
and that's true as well. And Pirates technically got like another pseudo lord.
That's true.
In this set, it's just like
Direfleet Neckbreaker.
Yeah, it's just like this is what Red Black Pirates are about, and it's turning sideways. So, like that's what you should be doing. And I think both Merfolk and Vampires are about going wide.
Yeah. If you remember, so Admiral Beckett Brass is the pirate lord.
Yeah.
And then there's the uncommon dinosaur that is
The spine back.
Make all dinosaurs go play. So they technically have a lord.
I think the Mistbinder is one of the cards in the set that could see modern play.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true.
Like if like blue-green Merfolk was already kind of a thing, and 2-mana alerts are good. So
Yeah, I made mention of like, this could be a card that if you're going really hard in green, like this could like push Regery out for a little bit if you want your vials to always be at 2.
Yeah.
Executive decision. I'm going to talk about Relentless Raptor instead of Siege-Horn Ceratops because
Ceratops is also bad.
yeah, I agree with that.
It's a bad match card.
Relentless Raptor is a red and a white for a 3/3 creature dinosaur. It has vigilance and it has to attack or block each combat of Fable. Which I think when we first looked at this, we saw like it was close. Like 2 mana 3/3s have been playable to good depending on the format, but in light of the Path of Metal decks, this card has already gotten a significant push because it is in the right colors and it has that significant vigilant keyword.
This also showed up in a Mardu Vehicles list in the Magic Online PTQ.
That makes sense because it does easily crew your vehicles and can avoid having to block with it.
Yes. That is the important fact on that.
So it kind of takes the like veteran motorist spot, I guess. I guess is kind of the obvious replacement.
This certainly attacks better by itself than veteran motors.
Yes, and also like if people are still playing, your what am I thinking of? Thing that makes Thopters, yeah. Better against that.
Your
World of Virtuoso.
Yeah, there you go. Thing that makes Thopters.
Thing that makes Thopters. I guess there's a couple things that makes Thopters now.
All right, last card for gold. Go for it, Dave.
You talking about the Sprinter or?
Oh no, we're talking about Zakama.
That card's not good.
Cards don't have to be good to be mentioned.
Yeah, it could be a little. You can take it. I don't care. I can't read that. I can't even read that from here.
Zakama, Primal Calamity,
Howlett
Moon. 6 generic red, green, white for a 9/9 legendary creature, Elder Dinosaur. It has vigilance. It has reach. It tramples. When it enters the
slices. It dices.
Yeah, if you cast it, all right, untap all lands you control. Now I do like that it says if you cast it, but it doesn't say from your hand. So somebody designed this thinking, man, somebody would really like to spin this off of a.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why? Why was that card?
Yep. 100%.
Marvel.
So
Anyways, it has 3 activated abilities.
Cast this dinosaur all the time.
2 generic and a red, it deals 3 damage to target creature. 2 generic and a green, destroy target artifact or enchantment. 2 generic and a white, you gain 3 life. I mention this only because this is the ramp target to go to if you're going to play ramp. And as I said, the lists, while they didn't do anything great this weekend, do exist that are playing this card to ramp into. I don't know if it's good enough either, but it's the kind of thing. Also, Morgan is talking about trying to play a Reanimator deck in Standard if the cards come together. 9/9 Vigilance, Reach, Trample with all these activated abilities might be the kind of card you want to reanimate. I'm just saying.
In Reanimator deck, right? Would you play this over the like 4/8 double strike indestructible like flying thing?
If you were in colors that could activate, like if you could definitely activate the 3 damage to target creature ability, then yeah, I think so. I think I'm in for it.
Okay, yeah, that's
just
fair.
because like you get a 9/9, but you also get something to do with mana after that. So. Again, it could be the kind of card that never sees any wink of constructed, or somebody ramps into it, you stare at it, and instead one tear slowly comes out as they howl at your face. Anyways,
not Howlett Moon.
Not Howlett Moon. Let's finish up with artifacts.
Oh, the hook.
Captain's Hook.
Yeah, give me the hook.
You're a crook, Captain's Hook. Judge,
Captain's Hook.
So, kind of a funny story. So let me just tell you what this card does. So Captain's Hook. It's 3 colorless for an equipment. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has menace. Is a pirate in addition to its other creature types. Whenever it becomes unattached from a permanent, destroy that permanent. It has an equip cost of 1. So funny thing is when this first got spoiled, I guess unofficially, the mana cost was covered up, so nobody knew what it cost. We just all we saw was the text on it, and it was just like, how much would this have to cost for this to be constructed playable?
I think 2.
Like 1, 2.
I think
maybe.
2 could have been constructed
like
playable.
2,
3 and stuff.
And then when they revealed it was 3, I was like, oh, which that's. I don't want to go off in a whole like tangent because we've talked about this at length, but like that's another reason why unofficial spoilers kind of stink because people are already disappointed.
Right.
But to be fair, the card is bad.
People should be excited though. This is a top-down design card based on the movie Hook.
Yeah, they even have the alligator in the back there.
Peter Pan's son, right? Wasn't he presented with a hook so he could join the pirate fraternity when he was all dressed up like Captain Hook? But then he remembered, had he put that hook on, he would have become a pirate in addition to his other creature types, and that was how the movie would have ended. So
Got me there.
If they would have taken the hook off, like to take him home, you had to sacrifice him to destroy that permanent. Next up, we have the Immortal Sun. Six generic for a legendary artifact. Players can activate Planeswalker loyalty abilities. At the beginning of your draw step, draw an additional card. Spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Creatures you control get +1/+1. You now...
If you open this in draft, just take it.
If you received 8 hours of sleep last night, you gain an additional hour on your day.
Oh man,
if you manage to eat a balanced diet, you have an easier time digesting. If you, I just want to start adding lines of text to this. I don't know. Creatures with haste lose haste, but gain haste.
You talk about slicing and dicing. I mean,
This card does a little bit of everything. I think we talked about this card a little bit when we first saw it. It's certainly powerful. But there's in the last time we've seen cards like this, I think of things like Staff of Nin, which saw it play in these control mirrors where you just wanted to draw an extra card. However, those formats didn't have cards like a Braid running around where you could easily destroy an artifact that you invested 6 mana in. The other downer to this card, I think, is the Planeswalker loyalty abilities, because the kind of card
affects you.
The kind of decks that want to play like a big artifact like this or slow are the kind of decks that probably are running some number of Planeswalkers too, and you can't with this card.
Yeah, I guess like. For flavor reasons, that makes sense because the Immortal Sun is the thing that keeps the Planeswalkers from being able to leave Ixalan. But I guess like for constructed playability purposes, like so all the other abilities on this like only affect you, but for some reason this like Planeswalker loyalty ability affects all players.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's like kind of awkward. But
it actually affects whatever table you're sitting at. So if like you're 3 seats down, you just hear like the glow, like the and you're like, oh come on, really? Who played the Immortal Sun? Ugh.
I finally got this Huatli in play. Ah!
I mean, you make jokes, but my opponent definitely cast this card against me when I had a Vraska in play. So
that's the world that you live in. That's sad.
It's sad. It's a very sad world. Vraska was
you
the short
take
target.
Vraska.
No.
I mean, the card is obviously powerful. I don't know how much making your spells cost 1 less helps when you have 6 mana to cast this, but maybe it does. But an Anthem where you get to draw extra cards, and it's not like it's a creature type Anthem like all the other ones have been. I don't know where it goes. I think I've seen some tokens deck trying it out because like it's good with tokens and they want extra cards, but I don't know how many do nothing permanents. I mentioned this before with Profane Procession. Those tokens like just keep jamming in cards that don't actually do anything. At some point, you won't do anything ever. But it's powerful, so we'll see if it finds a home.
I'm gonna guess no.
Okay,
6 mana is a lot.
it is. Stepping in.
It will find a home in probably many commander decks.
That's fair.
I'm assuming. All right, last card.
Yes.
Silent Gravestone. 1 mana artifact. Cards in graveyards can't be the targets of spells or abilities. So that's both graveyards. And it has an ability of 4 tap, exile, Silent Gravestone, and all cards from all graveyards draw a card. So this is an interesting take on Relic of Progenitus. I guess it's kind of totally different, I guess.
It's closer to like a take on like Grafter's Cage.
Or like Ground Seal.
Yeah,
right?
that's it.
It's like
Yeah.
So like this is kind of interesting because it can protect your graveyard as well as like you could play it in kind of 2 different ways, right? Like so if you're worried about like Reanimator, you can board this in and then the Reanimator deck can't target a creature in a graveyard, right? But if you're playing like something like Dredge, for example, and you're worried about targeted graveyard hate, you could play that. I'm not saying you would, but it's something that you could play to kind of protect your own graveyard from something like a surgical extraction or something to that effect.
It's interesting.
So it's like kind of interesting in that way, but ultimately, like you said, like Crook of Condemnation is probably, for standard anyway, is probably a better graveyard hate card. But it's something just to like be aware that it's around, and maybe there's some scenario where you would want this over that card.
Yeah, it's nice to have it in there. As we said, the Dinosaur deck was playing 3 of it, and it turning off things like the Scarab God is pretty relevant. But I will say this: it does turn off Rekindling Phoenix as well.
Yeah.
Because it's a target.
Yeah, Rekindling Phoenix is a target on the token, so it does do that as well for 1 mana, which is interesting. But I think, again, in standard at least, its flaw is that it just doesn't deal with God Pharaoh's Gift, so I have a tough time with that. I'd rather, if you have the Crook, as we mentioned, you could just eat the Phoenix as opposed to anything else, and stay ahead of God Pharaoh's Gift. So hopefully it finds a stance. The fact that finds a place. The fact that it cycles is helpful. But yeah. So there it is. There's the Palooza.
All said and done. You know what? I think that Rivals in combination with the bannings that we had is actually pretty exciting for Standard. And there are some Rivals cards that even branch into Modern or even Legacy, as we saw with Blood Sun. And I like this set. It feels like I'm glad that it is out because it's okay, we're all done with Ixalan. Let's move on to Dominaria. That is obviously very tantalizing and very exciting for people that have a history with the game of Magic. So, but I honestly think all in all, the Ixalan block is kind of a good entry point for someone getting into Magic. I think it's really compelling in the fact that there are a lot of interesting things. You have Merfolk, which a lot of people latch onto. You have vampires, which are pretty easy, thing, and you have dinosaurs, which is just a huge new thing for Magic, and a thing that is very popular among people who aren't even into Magic. A lot of people like dinosaurs, it turns out. So, and tribal sets are typically good times for people to kind of jump in on the game as well, which is what Ixalan is. So, and pirates are cool. Everyone likes pirates. And so I think Ixalan has some pretty nifty things going on with it overall, and I'm kind of glad to also have it all out there and be done with it and ready to be ready for Dominaria. You know what else I'm kind of weirdly excited for is the core set coming back.
Yeah,
is that weird?
I like corsets. When they went out of fashion, I was really sad, but now that they're back,
I detest you.
I heard, yeah.
Why did you have to test me?
No, we're done with this. I was just thinking about it today.
No, I absolutely
work.
agree with you, especially when the play design team is the one that's talked about this a couple times. We wanted the core set back so we could do these things and print these cards. It's yes, thank you. Balanced formats, you can do it. So I agree with that. And I think I agree with what you said about Ixalan in general as a plane, as a story-driven plane. It is effective. The art is really good. There's iconic creature types that people enjoy. And if you're a newer player, you won't know how terrible of a limited format is because it's all you'll know.
Am I allowed to be disappointed by this block?
Sure, of course.
I mean,
you're wrong. No, you absolutely can be.
No,
I think there's a solid argument to be disappointed.
He said it literally needed the bans for this to make Standard exciting, so the set didn't do it on its own.
Right.
It's even just the flavor of it, or just the storyline, whatever. I was skeptical as how they would make pirates and dinosaurs work when they first announced it, and it's I don't know. It just kind of feels like they kind of threw everything in. I guess it kind of makes sense with the story, but kind of feels like they just tried to figure out an excuse to just put all these things in there.
I agree with you on that. I think from a lore perspective too, I think Huatli is just not an enjoyable character and was poorly set up. Couldn't find a good color identity. That they. And then giving it multiple Planeswalker cards to a Planeswalker that's never left the plane, doesn't know what Planeswalking is, still hasn't figured this out. Literally, as of last week, was talking to Angrath, who's trying to help her find. It's no, we need to leave. We need to go and do this. Angrath apparently has been trapped on Ixalan for 14 years. He hasn't seen his children in 14 years. They've all grown up. That's your compelling character. But no, let's go to this triple Planeswalker who's never left Ixalan and doesn't know what it means. It was a frustrating perspective. The Jace Frasca stuff was, I think, compelling, but I don't know. It's frustrating.
Yeah, I think another thing too with the with the tribal side of it, Merfolk's really the only thing that you can take and play in older formats. I guess vampires to an extent, not as much. But
vampires are really popular casual trap.
Sure,
and I will say this, again, I know you're looking from a player perspective, but the conquistador element of it too is super flavorful. People really like that. It may not matter to you at all.
I'm talking more in a format like Modern, right?
Oh,
so there's a couple cards. So we talk about
Modern playability. No, sell a standard set.
No, but I know you can't keep doing goblins, elves every time, right? Because those are kind of
Goblins
the flag.
are on this plane. They're pirates.
Right, but they're not
playable.
Fanatical
We're not
Firebrand,
talking about goblins as a tribe. I know obviously they exist.
No,
But like, I know you got to branch off somewhat, but like pirates, it's hard to make a pirate deck outside of just what's in this block. You know what I mean?
absolutely. Yeah,
Dinosaurs obviously have never officially existed before this. We've had some cards that have now been changed to
They
dinosaurs.
became dinosaurs.
Yeah,
Right.
they got injected with dino DNA.
So like that's kind of
Bingo.
awkward because it's like if you play casually or like if you wanted to play something like that in modern, it's not really there. It's kind of self-contained to an extent.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
that is true. But like they have to do that sometimes, and we'll see dinosaurs again for sure. They were super popular. We'll see pirates again.
Yeah, I mean, even when you like look into Dominaria and like what could show up, then Dominaria could have Merfolk theoretically. Like maybe not like heavily focused on it, but they could have a few thrown in there. They could have a few vampires thrown in there, so they can seed cards in Dominaria that are still good with the tribes, but don't necessarily have to focus on it in Dominaria heavily.
Yeah, I guess maybe this is.
And then like I mean, is Rashad? Is that technically in Dominaria?
Mercadia? Yeah, it's in Dominaria.
Yeah, you can get pirates too. Get wrecked. You can't really have dinosaurs that heavily, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's one thing you have to pay attention to how they did that too. If you look at like Aether or Kaladesh, for example, there's a bunch of random pirates in there. Now that they have this creature type established, they want to do stuff with it. They can start to seed. I agree with you. It doesn't play well by itself beyond this, so it puts a lot of pressure on this block to do that, and it probably failed when it comes to pirates and dinosaurs.
I think it's also
especially
harder.
since you banned one, but
It's harder to do that when you only have two sets.
well, it's going to be really hard to do it when you have one.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what tribal sets are going to look like when that's your entire set?
No, and theoretically, you could still have two sets that are linked. Like,
You mean a major release and another major release?
Yes.
But you're still talking months apart.
Sure.
You know, how that's a whole different design. Like, that's a different question, but that's a whole different design paradigm. Like,
every set's months apart, though.
I mean, not that many months. Am I crazy? Like, you're going back to what, four releases or 3 in a year?
It's still 4 releases in a year.
4 major set releases.
Yeah.
Want to be one in the spring, one in the summer, one in the fall?
Is that the paradigm shift? I thought because you still have. I thought it was still 3 sets, and then
Is it one? Do we still get one in like
we still have
winter,
the core
like early
set, though.
winter, and then one in the spring?
yeah, 3 in a core set.
Okay, 3 in a core set. Okay.
I thought.
But okay, that's, I guess it's neither here nor there. I guess we'll have to see what that looks like. But I
Yeah.
still think you're designing with like most of the time you're going to be designing with one world in mind at a time. So it'll be hard to do that. But no, I get why you'd be disappointed in this set. I can also see that they did some things that are definitely there to try and attract, I would say, younger players or newer players, and that isn't always appealing.
Let's put it this way. Like I enjoy, maybe this is just the cube designer in me. I enjoy cards that kind of stand on their own. They don't necessarily need to interact with other cards in the block or whatever. So like my favorite cards in the set are like Rekindling Phoenix, Jade Light Ranger, cards like that they're just good cards. You don't necessarily need to play, Jade Light Ranger in a Merfolk deck for it to be good. It's just
Sure.
it's good. You could play it in a Merfolk if you wanted to. It's like incidentally a Merfolk, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but they can't ignore synergy.
No, I know.
Can't do that.
No, I know, and especially like for limited and things like that. But I don't know. I think like it just wasn't what I was expecting. I guess I don't know.
That's fair. I think that Rivals helped the Ixalan block as opposed to hurt it, because Ixalan itself I did not like at all, but Rivals has helped.
I would agree
but
with that.
I agree that the block overall did some good things, but I'm fine with never coming back to Ixalan for any reason. Like as a player, like a lore, from an art, from all that, I just like I'm cool. I got my fill. I have eaten of the coconut, and I'm good. I'm good.
All right.
Cool. Before we end the show, I do want to give a quick shout out to BCW Supplies. Thank you so much for being one of our lovely sponsors. If you want to find out more about BCW Supplies, you can check them out on Facebook by searching for BCW Supplies or by going to their website, bcwsupplies.com. And then as far as this weekend, of course, you do have the Comic Town IQ that you can attend. It's going to be a Saturday IQ on Sunday, so definitely give that a look-see if you're local and that's something that you would like to investigate. What's happening tournament-wise over the weekend? Anything? Any GPs or anything like that?
I'm trying to look that up. Keep talking, Morgan.
All right.
I need some time
I'm
here.
sorry. London is this weekend, is it not?
GP London.
Yeah, GP London is this week.
And that one is it still limited? Yeah, I figured it was probably going to be limited.
GP Houston as well.
Yeah.
Limited.
So if you're already in Texas for the Open, you can just I don't know how close Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston are necessarily. Texas is a big state.
It's pretty big.
Yeah, so it might not even be close at all, but yeah, so that'll be kind of the Magic tournaments you can check out over the weekend if limited is your thing. I do have to check out the GP because I know that they are definitely revamping coverage, and I know that Chagon had an article about that, and I didn't watch any of it, and I feel like that's a pretty major disservice to Rich. I know he puts a lot of time and effort into coverage. So
well, it's awkward that they decided to make the change, and then the first two
GPs are limited. Yeah,
but nobody really watches anyway. So,
yeah, it's weird. But that's going to be everything for us this week. If you want to reach out to us, you can via Twitter. We are just Your End Step, and when you add us, it's at Your End Step, or our email address at yourendstep@gmail.com, or Facebook. Do a quick search for at Your End Step on Facebook, and we pop right up. We also have a Patreon. If you are so inclined to contribute to our humble show here, you certainly can. We definitely appreciate it, and we have some nice bonuses and features for our patrons. If you do wish to contribute, we thank all of our patrons that do currently contribute. You help us, make the show week in and week out, and we definitely would have a harder time at it if you didn't contribute. So thank you. If you are listening to us via iTunes, feel free to leave us a review. It definitely helps our visibility. If you're listening to us via MTGcast, feel free to check out some of the other lovely Magic the Gathering shows that they have on there. Anything that you want, they got. But that's going to be everything for us this week. You have a great one. Bye.